Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our course this afternoon, which is titled Introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha. I'll start by just welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Krap. Welcome to everyone here at the temple, and welcome to everyone who's joining us online. It's nice to see you guys are interested in learning a little bit about the teachings of the Buddha. I'm going to start with meditation, which is how we typically will start a lot of our classes, and then I'm going to move into teaching you guys about this introduction to the teachings of the Buddha. And as we go, there'll be opportunities for you guys to ask questions and get help. But after we meditate is when I'll really get started with sharing with you guys the content of the teachings of the Buddha. One of the best ways to introduce you to the teachings of the Buddha is help you to learn a little bit about what he actually taught, which is meditation. So I'm going to guide you guys in a breathing mindfulness meditation in order to give you guys a little bit of an experience to taste some of his teachings, which is a practice of training the mind. So this practice of breathing mindfulness meditation is a primary training that he used in addition to other things to help get to this enlightened mental state. I start the meditation with some chanting to ease us into meditation. And over on the table there's some chants that you guys are welcome to get access to. They're on laminated sheets. And they even have the English translation so you can see what I'm actually chanting. These chants, they're not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony, or worship, or any kind of prayer, anything like this. It's just to help ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you read the English translations, you'll see that there's a lot of gratitude or respect or admiration for the Buddha. And because of that, I suspect that his students created these chants either during his life or after his death, where a Buddha doesn't go around teaching people how to chant things to him out of admiration and respect, because a Buddha would have eliminated their ego and their arrogance. So these chants are, during the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chants as a way to commit the teachings to memory, because everything that he taught was oral. So about once every 2 weeks, his students would chant in order to commit the teachings to memory. Nowadays, we don't need to chant in order to commit the teachings to memory, because we have books, we have videos, we have podcasts, things like this. But I still do chanting because it helps invigorate the mind and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. You kind of build some awareness of mind and awareness of the breath. But just keep in mind this isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony, or worship, or prayer, or anything like that. It's just to help ease the mind into meditation. Once we're in meditation, I'll provide you some guidance to be able to help you meditate. And then there'll be a period of time where we'll just be meditating together. All of us here at the temple and those of you guys online will just meditate together. And I'm sure you'll hear a certain maybe dog bark, or maybe a car go by, or maybe a bird chirping or something like that. But nonetheless, it'll be fairly quiet and you'll be able to meditate. And when you hear these different sounds, all these sounds are impermanent, and you can just bring the mind back to the breath. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting, and this will bring us out of the meditation, and then we'll start sharing the teachings of the course with you to be able to help you learn an introduction to the teachings of the Buddha. So if you'd like to join for meditation, oftentimes people start in the seated position, like you guys are sitting on the floor. Some people like to sit in a chair. You're welcome to sit in a chair if you'd like. There's actually 4 positions to meditate in: seated, lying, standing, and walking. But seated is a very common one to learn in. But since a lot of us didn't grow up on the floor like they do here in Asia, you might need a chair, and feel free to get a chair at any point, because if you're experiencing pain in the body, this is the way your body's telling you to make adjustment, make a change. You shouldn't just breathe through the pain. You would like to adjust your body positioning. So if you're on the floor, usually we sit with our legs crossed. It's really up to you to sit however you feel comfortable. But if you have your legs lightly crossed, this will allow the circulation to flow. Some people like to put their legs off the mat, which gets the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and it gives you more circulation in the lower body. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. And some people might find this comfortable, but not everybody will. And this practice isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way. You might decide to put your palms on your thighs or your knees or your palms up. Some people like to just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So whatever's comfortable for you, your lower body and hands and arms should be relaxed, not luxurious and not painful, but just completely relaxed and at ease. The upper body should be erect. By having the sternum up and the shoulders back, this keeps the ability to breathe into the body and get some breath. It also keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. So it's wise to keep the upper body erect during the meditation. So as I mentioned, I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting, and then I'll be back with some guidance, and then we'll be meditating from there. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rogavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusranang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตวาปมนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Again, I'd like to welcome all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here this afternoon. Welcome to everyone that's here. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online. This is our introduction to the teachings of the Buddha course. It's a 3-hour course to be able to help you guys to learn about the teachings of the Buddha, just as an introduction to help you guys get started. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to share with you guys here at the beginning of what a Buddha is. Then I'm going to share with you what the teachings of the Buddha are, what the teachings of the Buddha aren't, and then we're going to go into actually sharing the very first teaching of the Buddha with you so that you understand the very first teaching that he shared. And this is to help you guys understand what is the problem in the unenlightened mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. When you understand the very first teaching of the Buddha, you can have this real breakthrough to finally understanding why you experience anger and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, so that then you can actually eliminate them. Because that's what the path to enlightenment is to eliminate your discontent feelings so that you can get to the peace, the calmness, the serenity, the contentedness, and the joy that is the enlightened mind. So we're going to talk a little bit about enlightenment and help you guys to understand a little bit more about what it is. But first, let me just share with you guys that are here at the temple, maybe this is your first time here. There's a bathroom in the very back of the room. You're welcome to use it at any point. The very last door on the right, you're welcome to use that. If you go outside the classroom, there's main signs that'll take you around to the main temple bathroom, so you're welcome to use that as well. We even have water here that is provided by our students that you're welcome to help yourself to. Make yourself comfortable. Typically when I'm teaching, I will teach for about an hour and a half, and then I'll take a break, and then we take a good 20-minute break, and then we come back and I start teaching a little bit more. But because of the shortness of this course, I decided to just go ahead and teach all the way through. But you guys can feel free to come and go as you please. You can use the restroom, get some water, stretch your legs, whatever it is you need to do to feel comfortable, feel free to do that. I'm just going to keep teaching, and then as you guys decide that you would like to be here to ask questions and learn, you're welcome to do that. For those of you guys here, when we get to our question time, if you guys would like to ask questions, we have microphones in the white bowl here. If you guys could use a microphone, that'd be great so that everybody here at the temple can hear you. And they'll also hear you online as well, because we have plenty of people joining us online. The way that you use the microphone is there's a gray button on the front. You just press it. The light will come on. You just wait like a second or two, and then you hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple and online. And then you can keep the microphone with you so that if you or somebody around you needs it, you can just share it amongst you guys that it's kind of like in your general area. And for those of you guys that are online, if you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section. I'll be able to see that and answer your question. And in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions by opening up your mic, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. So to help you guys get started with learning a bit about the teachings of the Buddha, let me just share with you guys what an actual Buddha is. This might be a question that you have. This is oftentimes people are confused about what a Buddha is. You'll hear some people in the world that says everybody is a Buddha, but not everybody is a Buddha. A Buddha is a very unique individual, very rare individual in the world. The Buddha even said himself that it's very rare for a Buddha to exist in the world. So while other people might say that everybody is a Buddha, the Buddha himself didn't say that. And this is one of the challenges with the teachings of the Buddha, and why I decided to start teaching this course, is that because the Buddha lived over 2,500 years ago, and we're now 2,500 years away, that there's a lot of misunderstandings in the world about his teachings, and very few people study with the original teachings of the Buddha. You might think that every Buddhist monk must be studying with the original teachings of the Buddha, or every person who considers themselves a Buddhist practitioner must be studying with the original teachings of the Buddha. But this isn't actually true. Very few people in the world study with the original teachings of the Buddha. I've been to over 200 temples in my lifetime, and I've only ever been to one temple that studies the original teachings of the Buddha. That's less than 1%. And you're going to hear why as we talk here in our course today. But first, just understanding what a Buddha is. There's 3 primary criteria that make a Buddha a Buddha. The first criteria is that a Buddha gets to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They purify their mind, they train their mind, they get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy without the help of any teachers or any guides. That's the first criteria, that they independently get to enlightenment. The second criteria is that once they get to enlightenment, they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and countless people get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. And then the third criteria is that they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the 3 primary criteria make a Buddha, is they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. And then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. And an individual who gets to enlightenment, they know they've gotten to enlightenment because they no longer experience any anger or sadness or frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. So the Buddha, having gotten to enlightenment by himself, he knew that he had attained enlightenment. And then as he taught more and more students, as they trained their mind to uproot certain pollutions that are in the mind, they knew that they had gotten to enlightenment too, because it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you're not experiencing any anger, there's no frustration or agitation or annoyance, none of those discontent feelings are there. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. So these are the three main criteria of what make a Buddha a Buddha. One of the reasons why a Buddha can get to enlightenment, or a person who's going to become a Buddha can get to enlightenment by themselves, is this other criteria here, that a person who's going to become a Buddha has a deep, profound memory. They can remember countless details about their current life and their past lives too, that they can see all the things that transpired during this life and their past life too. Essentially, they have very deep recall. They don't remember every single detail, but they have countless memories of their current life and their previous life. So for example, in your life, you have certain memories of what's transpired in this life. And some people have also seen their past lives too. But in this life, you have a certain amount of memories that you have. Maybe when you think about your childhood, you have kind of spotty memories. But in the last 5 or 10 years, you can kind of remember the vast majority of the things that you experienced in the last 5 or 10 years. But when you go back to your childhood, you maybe just have kind of spotty memories. The reason why is because you have a limited capacity in your mind. It's kind of like a hard drive. Like a computer has maybe a 500 gigabyte hard drive or a 1 terabyte hard drive. It's got a limited capacity. And when you get to that capacity, you have to delete old files in order to store new files. And this is why you have spotty memories of your childhood, because when you got to a certain capacity of memory, you had to delete old files in order to store new files. So this is why you only remember certain things about your childhood. You don't have countless details and countless profound memory about your childhood. But a person who's to become a Buddha and an actual Buddha, they don't have this limited capacity in their mind. They have an unlimited capacity. So they can actually remember countless details about their current life and their previous life. So what they do is they accumulate wisdom over multiple lifetimes, including this lifetime, that all that wisdom comes together in their last life to be able to then use that wisdom to produce the enlightened mind in their last life. So this individual who we refer to as Gotama Buddha or the Buddha, he was born and referred to as Siddhartha Gautama when he was born. He was born into a royal family. He lived over 2,500 years ago. He was born in 563 BC, and then he died in 483 BC. And he lived for 80 years. He got to enlightenment at the age of 35, having put together all this wisdom that he accumulated over that 35-year period, but also in previous lives as well. He was able to retain this wisdom to then be able to apply it and train his mind to get to this enlightened mental state on his own without the help of any teachers or any guides. But your mind doesn't have that quality. You don't have countless recall of your current life and your previous life. And that's why one of the reasons why you need a teacher and guides to be able to help you on your journey to enlightenment. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment by yourself. So this is one of the qualities that a Buddha will have. A Buddha can quickly determine the condition of the mind of another person, and they only do this in order to help their students. So by the time an individual has gotten to enlightenment, particularly a Buddha, they would have been able to be very introspective and inward looking at their own mind and purified their own mind of various pollutions that the Buddha taught and discovered. And having done that work, he would then be able to see the certain pollutions in another person's mind through spending time with that individual and observing that they're bitter, or they're harsh, or they talk aggressive, or they're hostile, or some things like this, or maybe that they're being selfish or stingy or other things like this, or maybe their mind is lacking concentration and clarity and focus. A Buddha can be able to discern this by spending time around people. And as an individual does this, as a Buddha would do this, he would only do this as a way to help other people. It's not a way of making people feel diminished or degraded or anything like that, but instead as a way to understand that person's mind and then be able to offer them teachings that would be able to help them. But a Buddha only teaches an individual who chooses to learn. A Buddha doesn't go out into the world and try to force people or coerce people or guilt, shame, or fear somebody into learning and practicing their teachings. A Buddha is going to teach those people who show up that have a real sincere interest in learning and practicing, because you can't force somebody to attain enlightenment. It's not possible. An individual needs to choose that they're willing to do this inner work to improve the condition of their mind. Because in order to get to enlightenment, you need to apply a certain amount of effort and energy and dedication to be able to train your mind. You're doing this inner work. Essentially what you're doing is you're healing from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt again. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will never experience painful feelings in the mind ever again. There's still some muted physical pain by the time you get to enlightenment, but you won't experience the mental anguish that goes along with that. Like right now, if you stump your toe, you'd probably feel the physical pain, but then you'd also have certain mental anguish that would go along with that. By the time you get to enlightenment, if you stump your toe, you'll feel the physical pain, but it'll be very muted because you won't have the mental anguish. Your mind will still be peaceful and still be joyful because your mind has eliminated certain pollutions that are causing it to be shaken up. Your mind won't be shaken up any longer by the time you get to enlightenment. So a Buddha, having done this type of work on his own mind, he would be able to observe the quality of other people's minds and then help them to be able to get to enlightenment. And then another aspect of a Buddha is that a Buddha is going to be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. They're not going to teach one thing and do something different, because a Buddha understands that they teach through their spoken words, that their students are learning through the things that they say and the things that they're teaching in a class like this, but then also their students are learning through observing that individual. So a Buddha is going to be a living, breathing, walking example of his teachings. He's going to be functioning as an enlightened being so that his students can learn from that. They learn just as much, if not more, through observing your actions as they do through your spoken words. And if you're a parent or if you're a teacher, you know this, that your students are constantly learning through the things that you're doing. So if you're teaching your children not to lie, for example, but yet you lie, then it's very challenging for them to be able to learn not to lie, because they see you teaching one thing with your spoken words, but your actions are doing something different. Or you might teach people to be polite and kind and respectful, but then are you doing that yourself? So a Buddha, by the time he's teaching and he's actually gotten to enlightenment, he's going to be a living, breathing, walking example of his teachings. He's going to be teaching one thing, and he's going to be doing that exact same thing in terms of his day-to-day practice and how he's interacting in the world. So these are the criteria of what a Buddha is and how you can identify a Buddha. And it's the main three criteria of they get to enlightenment by themselves, they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and then they dedicate their time to helping countless people get to enlightenment, and they've preserved their teachings in such a way that countless people can get to enlightenment after their death. So this is what a Buddha is. And now let's talk about what are the teachings of the Buddha. Well, the teachings of the Buddha is a path to attaining enlightenment and purification of the mind. That as an individual is born, there's certain pollutions that are in the mind. That's not to say you're a bad person or there's anything to blame. You don't need to feel bad or diminished about this, because every single person who's ever been born has had these same pollutions that the Buddha discovered. The Buddha himself had these pollutions in his own mind. But it's through identifying and understanding those pollutions and the symptoms that they're causing and the challenges that they're causing in your life that you can then purify the mind, uproot these pollutions, and actually get to enlightenment. So the path to enlightenment is to purify the mind of these pollutions that the Buddha discovered. Enlightenment itself is a mental state that you attain during this life, or you attain it at death. The ideal thing would be to attain enlightenment during your life, because once you attain enlightenment during your life, you will spend the rest of your life with this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. The enlightened mental state, it's not a light switch. It's not like 1 minute you're unenlightened and the next minute you're enlightened. We call it enlightenment, but it's not a light switch. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It's not instantaneous. And the Buddha talks about this in his teachings, because everything you've ever done in life has been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. You know this to be true, that when you've learned English, for example, if you speak in English or you write English or you understand the spoken language of English, even if you're a native speaker, it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that led you to that. And if you have some job or occupation, it's the same thing. It's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So anything that you've accomplished in life has been the same exact way. So getting to enlightenment, it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress on this path to purify the mind of these pollutions, that then the mind is experiencing this peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy. The mind in the enlightened mental state will no longer experience any of these discontent feelings in others. So sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, Boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. The mind is incapable of experiencing those feelings ever again because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing those. And that's what the Buddha discovered, is what are the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings. And then once he discovered what they were, he discovered the tools and techniques to uproot those causes and conditions so that then you can eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings, and then you can experience the peace and the joy. And his very first teaching points this out to you. So that's why I'm going to share with you his very first teaching to help you understand the main cause and condition that's producing these feelings. Because once you understand what's producing these feelings, then you can eliminate them. What the mind does in the unenlightened state is it will typically blame other people for the feelings that you experience. If you get angry, if you get frustrated, you might blame the people around you, or you might blame the situation. But it's actually the mind itself that's causing this. But when you misunderstand what the real problem is, you'll typically push people away out of your life. You might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people, or you might put your expectations on people, trying to control them to do things your way. And as long as you're pushing people away, you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to people, or you're putting your expectations on people, the number of people that you can spend time with becomes fewer and fewer and fewer in the world, because the mind thinks that I'm right and everybody else is wrong. This is what the unenlightened mind experiences because of its ego. It thinks that everybody else is wrong and I'm right. Everyone else is the problem. And now the mind will push people away. It will be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or put your expectations on people. But I'm going to show you today in a way that you can independently verify for yourself of what's truly causing these discontent feelings, so that then you can actually eliminate them. If you didn't know what was causing them, you wouldn't actually be able to eliminate them. By the time you get to enlightenment, having uprooted these pollutions, not only are you no longer experiencing these discontent feelings, but the mind's functioning with a high degree of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of mind. The mind is now performing optimally. The Buddha describes this in terms of a musical instrument. If you think about a musical instrument that may be like a guitar, like a stringed instrument, if the string is too tight and you pluck it, the instrument doesn't play beautiful music. It doesn't play the way the instrument is intended to play. But also if the string is too loose and you pluck that, it doesn't play beautiful music. It doesn't sound right. It's only when you tune this instrument with the string perfectly in the middle that now you pluck it and it plays the way the instrument was intended to play. It plays beautiful music. Your mind is the same way. If you're holding on to things too tight or too loose, it doesn't perform optimally. So this is where an individual can lack focus, concentration, clarity, or memory. Because the mind being polluted, it has difficulties performing optimally. But when you uproot these pollutions out of the mind, then your mind will perform more and more optimally. And you'll have this focus, concentration, this deep memory, and this clarity of mind. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll have deep wisdom about the path to enlightenment, and you will have trained your mind to the point where you can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody around you. Right now, it's probably hard or challenging for you to do that. There are certain situations where you get angry and you get frustrated and you get annoyed, and maybe you say things that you regret later. But by the time you fully purify the mind, you can be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody around you. It doesn't matter who they are, what they're doing. It doesn't matter what experiences they're having or you're having. You can still be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everyone in the world. You won't be causing harm through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. Oftentimes, we think that what we're doing in the world is so wonderful and so perfect. But in reality, when you see the teachings of the Buddha, you will understand why you're experiencing certain unwholesome results and certain difficulties in relationships, because the mind lacks wisdom about certain natural laws. And as long as you're putting harm out into the world, this harm is going to come back to you. But when you awaken to the wisdom of these natural laws, you'll be able to see more and more clearly how to not cause harm to others, and then this harm won't come back to you. Because of all of this, you'll notice that your personal and professional relationships will really blossom. That in the unenlightened state, you might have a certain amount of bitterness or hostility or animosity or resentment in your relationships. You might find with your parents or your brothers and sisters, or maybe your life partner or your children. You might be really struggling in some of those relationships. And this is just because the mind lacks wisdom. It has certain pollutions that are there that are hindering it from being able to have very harmonious relationships. relationships. But by the time you fully purify your mind, you can have harmonious relationships with everybody and anybody, both personally and professionally. And it's through eliminating what we call craving, anger, and ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. This is referring to what we call the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. These are the 3 high-level pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. What craving is the longing, the yearning, the chasing after things, thinking that something external is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So what the unenlightened mind does is it chases after things. It thinks that this new pair of shoes is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction, or this new job, or more money, or more friends, or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. The mind chases after different things. And if it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, or other feelings like this. This is because of its cravings. You can think of these almost like selfish desires. The mind is just looking out for itself and chasing after things, wanting things to be satisfying for itself. And like I mentioned, if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you get those painful feelings. And one of the things that arises is anger. That's the next unwholesome root. This is where the mind is frustrated or agitated or annoyed. We call it anger, but there's lesser versions of that too. Even dislike, where the mind just dislikes somebody. This is the anger that is arising. And oftentimes when the anger arises, this is where you become unskillful in your intentions, your speech, and your actions, the way you interact with somebody, that the mind will maybe be bitter and harsh and hostile towards others. And this is where the relationships get damaged. And where all of this is coming from is the 3rd poison, or the 3rd unwholesome root, or the 3rd fire. We refer to it as ignorance, but this nowadays is kind of used as a derogatory word. And the Buddha wouldn't have talked down to people in a derogatory way. An enlightened being doesn't diminish other people. So I like to use the phrase, the unknowing of true reality, right? This lack of wisdom, this confusion, this misunderstanding, that the unenlightened mind misunderstands what the true problem is. The unenlightened mind has this unknowing of true reality, where it just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It doesn't understand that its own cravings are producing the anger. So therefore, because of the ignorance, craving and anger continues to exist in the mind. But when you arise wisdom and you can see the truth for yourself, that your mind's causing these discontent feelings, that the craving's causing it, and it's producing this anger, and now the mind is being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, and it's driving people away. Now you can arise wisdom of how to train your mind, and you can eliminate your cravings, and therefore you can eliminate your anger. So these are the high-level ways that we talk about what's going on in the unenlightened mind. And what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're purifying the mind of craving, anger, and ignorance. But this goes a lot deeper into what we call the 10 fetters. But usually when you're learning, the way that the Buddha teaches is kind of this layered effect, where you start with kind of like some basic teachings, and then you get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the teachings. So I just gave you guys this little bit of a summary of these 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, just to kind of touch on the surface. If you ever decided to go deeper into the teachings of the Buddha, we would expand this for you further and help you get deeper into understanding what the real challenges are in the unenlightened mind. In the very first teaching that the Buddha shares, which is called the 4 Noble Truths that I'm going to share with you today, we're going to peer into this craving a lot closer to help you guys understand that one. And then more about what the teachings of the Buddha are is I refer to them as the natural laws of existence. The natural laws of existence are kind of like an umbrella. And then underneath of that, there's multiple natural laws that the Buddha taught about. The main natural law that he's teaching about is called the natural law of Gama. Some people refer to this as karma. This is from the Sanskrit language. If you speak Sanskrit, people will refer to it as karma. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language. So if somebody studies the original teachings of the Buddha in the Pali language, they will tend to use the word Gama. So it's referring to the same natural law. What this word means is it means cause and effect, or action and result. If this word translated to just one English word, I would just use that English word because it'd be a lot easier for you. This natural law of karma, it's not punishments and rewards. It's not mystical and magical. It's not about who to blame or who's at fault. There's no being that's overseeing this and telling you who's at fault or who gets punished and who gets rewarded. That's not what the natural law of karma is. It's not mystical or magical. It's literally the cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. So for example, if you go into a public space like this and you meet brand new people, if you're polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, people will tend to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to you. But if you are impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful, people will tend to be that way with you. This is the results of your decisions. This is your karma. And when you have wisdom, you'll naturally make wise decisions that is then going to produce wholesome results in your life. This is your wholesome karma. Because of your wise decisions, it will produce wholesome karma, or wholesome results in your life. But when you lack wisdom, you're going to make unwise decisions that produce unwholesome results, or unwholesome karma. So it's this cause and effect, or action and result. Oftentimes we think that what we experience in life is either good luck or bad luck, or it's our destiny, or it's our fate. But more and more, when you get into the teachings of the Buddha, you can independently verify this natural law of karma, that every single thing that you experience is a result of your decisions. What you're experiencing isn't the result of other people's decisions. But if you continued with that thinking, that it's other people that are causing things to happen in your life, and you don't realize that it's your decisions that's producing these things, then you're basically out of control. You're like a robot going through the world. It's destiny, it's fate. I'm destined to experience this. Or it's good luck or it's bad luck, and there's no way for me to change that. That's a really defeating way to think about the world. But if you understand and start awakening to the natural law of karma, you can see that whatever you experience is a result of your decisions. And now it's just a matter of cultivating wisdom, making wiser decisions to produce wholesome results in your life. And this is why you can get to a point where everything you experience in life is wholesome. Your life can be peaceful. It can be joyful. Your life can be at ease. But as long as an individual thought that other people are causing difficulties in their life, then it's about everybody else is the problem. But if you realize that your own mind is lacking wisdom of this natural law, and by awakening to that wisdom, you can produce better decisions in your life that will then produce better results. I can use an example of something that you've already awakened to in terms of a natural law. There's the natural law of gravity that every single one of us have already awakened to. We've already cultivated the wisdom of this natural law. That's what it means to awaken to a natural law, is that you're cultivating wisdom about that natural law. That at one time in our life, we lacked wisdom of this natural law of gravity, and we struggled. We fell down, we hit our head, we busted open our elbows, we busted our knees, we broke our toys, we broke other things that belonged to other people, and we cried and we were upset and we struggled and we had all these difficulties. This natural law of gravity affected us, whether we were aware of it or not. And there's no being that's controlling it. It just happens. And because we lacked wisdom of that natural law of gravity, we made unwise decisions, and it produced unwholesome results for us. But then as we aged, we gradually learned about this natural law of gravity, and we started making wiser decisions. By the time we were 10 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old, we started tying our shoes a little bit tighter. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalks. We stopped being so giddy as a little child, walking around, jumping around, falling down so many times. We started making wiser decisions about this natural law of gravity because we understood it. We had wisdom of this natural law. And by the time we were 10 or 12 or 14, we were able to ride our bicycle, we were able to climb ladders, we were able to get on airplanes and travel all over the world because we fully awoke to this natural law of gravity, and now we make wiser decisions about this natural law of gravity. I usually point out to students about this glass of water behind me, that I don't put it in front of me because I understand the natural law of gravity, that it's only a matter of time before I knock that over if I put that in front of me. Nobody told me to put it behind me. Nobody told me that would be a wise decision. But if you understand and you're fully awake to the natural law of gravity, you'll naturally make wiser decisions on your own because you understand that natural law of gravity, and you'll tend to make wiser decisions that are going to produce wholesome results for you. And the same thing is true about the natural law of karma and these natural laws that the Buddha taught, that if you don't believe his teachings, but you learn them, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and you practice them, you can awaken to the wisdom of these natural laws, and you will naturally make wiser decisions in your relationships, in your career, in your personal and professional life. You will naturally make wiser decisions that's going to produce wholesome results. But if you're not awake to this natural law, you're going to have that unknowing of true reality, or that lack of wisdom. You're going to make unwise decisions that is producing these unwholesome results without even realizing that's what you're doing. And what the unenlightened mind will typically do when you're experiencing unwholesome results is it will blame it on other people. It will either say that it's other people's fault, or you might think that it's destiny or fate or good luck or bad luck. And this is the mind's lack of wisdom, not realizing that what you're experiencing in life is truly the results of your decisions. So the more that you can awaken to this natural law that the Buddha taught, you can learn, you can reflect, and you can practice to acquire wisdom. So what a teacher does for you is that we help you to intellectually learn the teachings through books, through classes, courses, retreats. We help you to learn the teachings, but you're doing the work as an individual practitioner on the journey to enlightenment. You're doing the work to learn. Then as you learn intellectually, you start reflecting to independently verify whether the teachings are true or false. And then you start practicing the teachings. There's multiple practices. Meditation is one thing, but there's many things that you practice as part of the path to enlightenment. Your practice isn't just meditation. You can't just meditate your way to enlightenment. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation, but you wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment either. You need to learn other things. So as you're learning the teachings, you're not believing what the Buddha taught. You're investigating his teachings and examining them. Then you're reflecting on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or false based on your own direct experience, because he's explaining to you the way the world is. And because you've lived in the world a certain period of time, when he's explaining it to you, you can reflect on your own direct experiences to determine whether it's true or false. Then you can practice his teachings and start using the tools and techniques to uproot the pollutions out of your mind. And this is where you'll see more peace and more joy coming into your mind. Slowly but surely, the mind will move closer and closer to the peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. So the Buddha didn't explain that the way the world should be. He didn't give a bunch of rules and commandments and explaining the way the world should be. And if everybody just follows those rules, then it would be a peaceful world. He didn't do that. He didn't give rules and commandments. What he did instead is he explained the way the world is. And when you understand the way the world is through these natural laws, now you'll navigate that world more readily. But when you lack wisdom of those natural laws, you'll struggle. You'll have difficulties. You'll make unwise decisions. You'll experience anger and frustration and irritation. This is the indication to you that your mind isn't fully awake yet. Just like your car has a red light on the dashboard of the car and it alerts you to a problem that's inside the car, and then you pull over and you pop your hood and you check, or maybe you take your car to a mechanic, the red light is indicating to you, hey, there's something wrong with this car. You need to fix it. Well, the anger and the sadness and the frustration and the bitterness or the loneliness and the boredom and the guilt and the shame and the fear and the stress and the anxiety, this is the red light in your mind telling you, hey, you don't have full wisdom here. You need to pull over. You need to reflect. You need to train your mind, because this is the indicator to you that your mind hasn't fully cultivated wisdom. There's an issue here that needs to be resolved. And that's where a teacher is able to help you to understand the teachings and guide you to eliminating what's causing these discontent feelings to arise. So the Buddha didn't explain the way the world should be. He's explaining the way that the world is. And it's through training the mind to experience complete peace and joy that as you awaken to this wisdom of the natural laws, you can eradicate the pollutions of mind that are causing the mind to experience these discontent feelings. The teachings of the Buddha are timeless. What he taught 2,500 years ago, it's timeless. His teachings are very clear, they're very concise, and they're very precise. His teachings aren't based in a culture of 2,500 years ago. He understood that the world has impermanence in it. So when he taught and he described these natural laws, he described them in a way that is timeless. And the natural laws haven't changed from the lifetime that the Buddha lived. It's the same exact natural laws. The books and people's memories have changed. And this is why some people misunderstand his teachings. but the natural laws themselves haven't changed. So that's why when you learn with the original teachings of the Buddha, you can learn them, you can reflect on them to independently verify them, and you can practice them, and you can see that they actually work. So he speaks very clear, very concise, and very precise. He does teach about the cycle of rebirth. This is part of his teachings. He teaches about 5 realms of existence. He teaches about hell, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. But he teaches the cycle of rebirth because it's what is truly occurring, and you can actually independently verify this. When someone's first starting on the path, I suggest that they set the cycle of rebirth to the side, because what's happened in the past is in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. What may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It doesn't matter. Right now, you're in the human state. And in the human state, if your mind's experiencing discontentedness, then you know it's unenlightened, that the mind is unenlightened, and the focus should be to get to enlightenment now in this life. But he taught the cycle of rebirth because as you're removing the pollution out of the mind, it's not uncommon for people to experience the residual memories of their past lives. You can observe certain things that happened in your past life. So if you experience vivid memories of being murdered in the past, or having some other traumatic thing happen, maybe you were raped or murdered or beat up or something like this, and you're having these memories coming to the surface now in this life, and you know that this hasn't happened to you in this life, this could really shake you up if you didn't understand that this was from a previous life, and you can put that aside and let that go. Or the other thing that can happen as you're starting to eliminate the pollution out of the mind is some people can start experiencing communication from beings from these other realms, from the hell realm, from the afflicted spirit realm, from the heavenly realm. And if you didn't understand the cycle of rebirth in these realms, it could really shake you up. Or some people can even see beings from the hell realm, the afflicted spirit realm, and the heavenly realm. They're formless beings. They don't have physical form, but some people can actually see them. And if you didn't understand that these things existed and this is the way the world is, it would really shake you up. So there's ways to independently verify this cycle of rebirth and these realms of existence. You may not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but that's part of the journey, that if somebody decides that they would like to get on the path to enlightenment, I encourage them to focus on the core central teachings of the Buddha. But then probably a year and a half, 2 years into your training, when you're starting to notice all this improvement from early on all the way up to that point, you might get to the point where you've got the core central teachings under your belt. You're really practicing those well. And now that might be an appropriate time to start approaching the cycle of rebirth, and now approaching this in a way that will help you to be able to understand it. The Buddha also did teach about God. This is one of the misunderstandings about the teachings of the Buddha. People think that the Buddha didn't teach about God. He actually did. He talks about God at different times in his teachings, but he didn't put God as a central role or a central figure in his teachings, because it's not God who actually decides whether you get to enlightenment or not. The Buddha didn't teach any kind of rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. He didn't teach to praise God or to worship God, because he's putting you at the center of his teachings, because it's you that needs to cultivate wisdom. It's you that needs to train your mind. It's you that can make your way to enlightenment. But he does teach about God, but he doesn't make God as a central role in his teachings. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they believed in multiple gods. So you can see where he talks about these multiple gods, helping people to understand. But then he talks about this one great God. He refers to this God as the creator of all things. There's various teachings that he shares, but you don't have to have a relationship with God in order to get to enlightenment. And depending on what you've been taught already about God, you might have kind of a difficult relationship with this being, or maybe you don't even think that this being exists, perhaps, and that's fine. You can get to enlightenment either without a relationship with God or with a relationship with God. Getting to enlightenment doesn't require a relationship with God, but you at least need to get to a point where you don't have any anger or hatred or bitterness or hostility towards any being whatsoever, including God. And the Buddha provides you various tools and techniques to train your mind to get to the point where you uproot your anger and your hatred and your animosity and your bitterness and your hostility towards all beings, not just towards God, but towards any being. So if you have bitterness or hostility in your mind towards any being, the mind is still going to not experience enlightenment. So here, the Buddha does teach about God as part of his teachings. Now, just a little bit more before I open up to questions and see what you guys have in terms of questions of what the teachings of the Buddha are, is that there's a collection of teachings called the Pali Canon. This is the original source teachings of the Buddha. There are 45 volumes of books. They're about this thick. So that's about maybe 10 centimeters or maybe 4 or 5 inches. There's 45 volumes of these books. And this is captured shortly after the death of the Buddha. The Buddha taught orally during his lifetime and nothing was written down. It wasn't until after his death that they actually wrote the teachings down. So his discourses were documented shortly after his death. When he taught during his lifetime, the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. It existed in China, but it hadn't made its way to where the Buddha was born, which was Nepal, or he taught in what we refer to as Northeast India. So in that region of the world, all the languages that were being used were all oral languages. They were spoken languages. They didn't even have a script. But by the time he taught and he helped people get to enlightenment, there were countless people who had gotten to enlightenment. Your mind will never forget the teachings that it takes for you to get to enlightenment. Whatever wisdom you cultivate in order to get to enlightenment, you will never forget that wisdom. You will have deep, profound memory. Your mind will now be functioning optimally with concentration and focus. So out of all these enlightened beings that existed during the lifetime of the Buddha, shortly after his death, about 500 of them got together that had gotten to enlightenment. And they have this deep, profound memory of the wisdom that it took for them to get to enlightenment. So these 500 people documented his teachings, and we refer to that as the Pali Canon or the Pali text. This is consolidated into the book series that I share, which I refer to this book series as the Words of the Buddha, the Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. These 45 volumes of books, if you were to print them out, it would cost about 3 months of your salary if you lived here in Thailand. The average Thai person makes about 12 to 15,000 baht per month. And if you printed out all 45 volumes of these books, it would cost about 3 months of your salary. So the average Thai person, the average Buddhist temple, doesn't actually have these 45 volumes of books available to them. You probably don't own a book collection worth 3 months of your salary. You probably have never purchased a book collection like that. So the average Thai person is the same way, that you won't see the Pali Canon in somebody's house typically, or even at a Buddhist temple because it's so expensive to print out. But nowadays what we've done is we've consolidated it because there's a lot of repetition in these 45 volumes. It's been consolidated into these 13 books. And now because of the internet, we can make it available for free anywhere, that people can download these books at no cost. Or if somebody would like to print it, I invite them to go take it themselves and go print it themselves if they like. Or I print copies here, and then I just ask for people to reimburse me for the printing cost. And then also they're available on Amazon too for people who are throughout the world. If you would like to get a version of these books, you can get them from Amazon if you'd like them in printed format. So this is the original source teachings of the Buddha. And in order to get to enlightenment, you would need to be learning with the original source teachings, the true teachings of the Buddha. Over the 2,500 years, people have either inadvertently changed his teachings or they overtly changed his teachings. For a long time, his teachings have been an oral tradition for essentially the entire 2,500 years. And in an oral tradition, it's very easily for things to inadvertently get changed or modified. So that's what we see has occurred over 2,500 years, is people have changed his teachings. But when you go back to the original source teachings and you don't believe his teachings, but you learn them, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and you practice them, you can see the truth for yourself of what is the true teachings of the Buddha, because you can independently verify each thing that the Buddha actually taught. And just to kind of sum this up about what the teachings of the Buddha are, is the teachings of the Buddha are to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. There are certain pollutions that are in your mind that are causing these painful feelings, and you can understand those, you can uproot them, you can eliminate them, and you can heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt again. Sometimes we think the way to heal from what hurt you is to push people away, or to go live in a bubble, or to change other people, or to convince other people to do things a certain way. But that's not the way that you heal your mind. That's not the way that you get to the peace and the joy. You need to be able to train your own mind. So when you understand what is actually causing the painful feelings in the mind, then you can actually heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt again. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll never hurt again. You'll never experience mental anguish or painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment. All of that is eliminated from the mind. And you can see that your mind's getting closer and closer to that as you're making your way to enlightenment. So this is what I had to share with you about what the teachings of the Buddha are. What I'm going to do is pause for any questions that you guys might have about what the teachings of the Buddha are. And then I'm going to share a little bit with you about what the teachings of the Buddha aren't, because that will help you to understand more about what the teachings of the Buddha are. So if you guys here at the temple have any questions, you can use the microphones here. And those of you guys online, you can ask questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. Do you guys have any questions here? Okay, looks like Rachel, you have a question. Let me get my, here you go. If you'd like to open up your mic, feel free. We'll be able to hear you.
Hi, good afternoon, David. Yes, I have 2 questions. One is about meditation, because today I tried to did meditation in a lying position directly from my nap to meditation, but at the end I found myself fall asleep.
Yeah, what I'd like to do, if possible, is postpone this to another time. Maybe we can talk privately, or we can talk during a different class, because I'd like to be able to focus on the intro rather than helping you with this personal thing. But I appreciate you asking the question. I'm really pleased that you're working on your meditation. But is this something we can postpone to another time?
Okay, all right. And I have another question. That is, you mentioned that the 3 qualities of a Buddha. One is that he attained enlightenment without by himself or by themselves, without the guidance of teachers. So my question is, you also mentioned that some people say everybody can become Buddha. So based on the criteria you just mentioned, so that means that, like for me or for people like us, because we have you as our teacher, as our guide, so we are not able to become Buddha. But of course, if we keep train our mind, we may have the possibility to become to attain enlightenment.
So everyone who gets to enlightenment is not a Buddha. You can get to enlightenment and be an enlightened being, but you're not going to be a Buddha at that point. You'll be an enlightened being. So these 3 criteria, the main 3 criteria that I mentioned that make a Buddha, this is very rare in the world. The Buddha describes this in his teachings, how rare it is for an individual to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves. So the last one that the world is currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you're going to need teachers, you're going to need guides, you're going to need people to help you. You don't have that deep, profound memory that I'm describing. So like when you think about your childhood, like I mentioned, you have spotty memories. That shows you that your mind doesn't have the capability to get to enlightenment by yourself, because you're not able to remember the countless details of your current life in your previous lives as well. So you can get to enlightenment and you would be an enlightened being at that point, but you wouldn't be an actual Buddha meeting those 3 criteria in those others that I talked about.
Yeah, that helps. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Looks like we might have a question here at the temple. You have a question, sir?
Hello? Oh, yeah. I just wanted to ask if you could go through the ignorance part again, just a bit deeper on that part for me.
Sure. What this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality is, this is where the mind lacks wisdom. It has misunderstanding. It has confusion about the world around you. And because of the mind's lack of understanding, it will continue to have craving. It will continue to have anger. So for example, what the Buddha is teaching on the Eightfold Path, which I'm going to introduce you to here in a moment, is he's sharing with you this natural law of Gotama, this cause and effect, or this action and result. He's helping you to be able to see how this natural law functions. But what the ignorance is the mind's ignorant to this. It has this unknowing of true reality. It doesn't understand the natural law of Gotama. Just like with the natural law of gravity, the mind had a certain unknowing of true reality. And because of that unknowing of true reality, when we lack the wisdom of the natural law of gravity, we made unwise decisions and it produced unwholesome results in our life. But then we got wisdom, which is exactly the opposite of ignorance. And now we make wise decisions based on the natural law of gravity. So the same thing is occurring in the mind based on these natural laws that the Buddha taught, that the mind is ignorant of them, or lacking wisdom, or it's confused, it's having misunderstanding, it has this unknowing of true reality. And because the mind lacks that wisdom, it continues to make unwise decisions and it continues to experience unwholesome results in one's life. But when you fully awake to enlightenment, you have complete wisdom of this natural law of Gotama and all the other natural laws. And now you will make wise decisions. In your life, will only experience wholesome results in your life. You won't be experiencing bitterness and hostility and aggression coming back to you, because you're not doing that with other people. But as long as you don't understand what you don't understand, you will naturally make unwise decisions, not realizing that it's an unwise decision to be bitter and harsh and hostile in the world. And maybe even if somebody does understand that intellectually that's unwise, the mind doesn't have the full practice developed to be able to practice being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. Because some of us, we might understand that it's unwise to be impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful, but the mind lacks control or discipline to be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful in all situations. So to eradicate the ignorance, there's a certain amount of intellectual learning that you need to do. And then there's that reflection to reflect and verify each of the teachings of the Buddha. But then to fully eradicate this unknowing of true reality, you need to practice the teachings. And when you're practicing the teachings, this will fully uproot this ignorance out of the mind. And now you'll be able to function in the world with ease because your mind's fully awake and wise. And now when you're functioning in the world, for example, you can be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to all beings. And because you've been doing this for an extended period of time, that's what will come back to you. But as long as the mind lacks the wisdom of how to do that, then it won't be able to do it, and it'll lack the discipline or the control. So therefore, it will continue to experience these unwholesome results coming back. So even though we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's because of ignorance that craving continues to exist in the mind. And because of craving, the anger continues to exist. So when you eradicate the ignorance through arising wisdom, you can eliminate craving and you can eliminate ignorance. And now the mind can experience the peace and joy of the enlightened mental state. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions here. So I'm going to move on to sharing with you guys just a little bit about what the teachings of the Buddha aren't. This is one of the ways of teaching to be able to help you understand what the teachings of the Buddha are, is explain to you what the teachings of the Buddha aren't. They're not a collection of beliefs, doctrine, concepts, opinions, or views that produce a pleasant afterlife if you just believe, or an unpleasant afterlife if you don't believe. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are. They're not a bunch of beliefs. It's not believe, and hope something good happens when you die. You're learning now, you're reflecting now, and you're practicing now in this life. And because of that, you're seeing the results now in this life. This is very rare in the world. I haven't seen any other teachings that are like this, that you learn his teachings, you examine them, you investigate them, you can independently verify that they're true or they're false, and then you can practice them and uproot these pollutions, and you see the results now in this life, that your mind's becoming more and more and more peaceful. So his teachings aren't this collection of beliefs or doctrines or rules or concepts or opinions or views. He's explaining to you the way the world is. His teachings aren't religion. Some people categorize the teachings of the Buddha as a religion. You know, people talk about Buddhism as a major religion in the world. Well, when I think about religion, I think about an organization that's collected up teachings, and there's typically one person at the top that's disseminating these teachings out to other people and telling other people what they should do and what they shouldn't do. So the Buddha never did that. He didn't have an organization and put one person at the top. He didn't create these rules and commandments that this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do. You are your own individual practitioner. You are your own independent individual who's working to acquire wisdom. You're not a follower. You're not a devotee. You're not a believer. You're not a faith practitioner or anything like that. You're your own individual practitioner. You're on your own journey to enlightenment, your own independent journey. A teacher is essentially like a tour guide. We're like pointing out the way. We're showing you the way of how to get to enlightenment. So there isn't just one person at the top of Buddhism, and then everybody has to follow whatever that person says, and there's these rules and commandments. That's not what the Buddha actually did. To me, religion is rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. If you think about religion in that way, that it's rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, here again, you can see the teachings of the Buddha are not a religion because he didn't teach any rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. Even this chanting that I do, this isn't a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship. This is a way to ease the mind into meditation, invigorate the mind, bring awareness to the mind and awareness of the breath so that you get more benefit out of the meditation itself. And you actually don't even need to chant in order to get to enlightenment. You can get to enlightenment without chanting as well. So there are no rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship because the ultimate goal is to cultivate wisdom. That's what it takes in order to get to enlightenment. And you can't get to wisdom by just believing a bunch of things, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. And you can't get to wisdom through rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. It doesn't matter how much water I sprinkle on you. It doesn't matter how many strings I tie around your wrist. It's not going to produce wisdom in your life. If you're lacking wisdom of how to interact in your relationships, it doesn't matter how much water I sprinkle on you. It doesn't matter how many strings I tie around your wrist. You haven't cultivated any wisdom that's going to help you in your life to make wiser decisions. So this is why the Buddha didn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, because it doesn't lead to enlightenment. But one of the things that you might experience is if you go to a Buddhist temple or Buddhist communities, you might see a lot of rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And this is because of the 2,500 years of history that people have gotten farther and farther and farther and farther away from his teachings. And you see people in Buddhist communities doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and they're calling it Buddhist. And in their mind, they might think what they're doing is actually Buddhist. But if you go back to the original teachings of the Buddha, you will see that he didn't teach any rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. He was encouraging people to not do these things as he was teaching his students, because in order to get to enlightenment, you need to cultivate wisdom. And these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship doesn't produce wisdom in the mind. So you might find that you go into Buddhist centers or Buddhist temples and you see people doing those things. And this is because people aren't studying with the original teachings, as I mentioned. Because they're in 45 volumes of large books and the average person doesn't have access to them, they're not studying with the original teachings. So these rituals and these rites and ceremonies and worship have been included in the various things through this oral tradition. And if you're an individual growing up in remote Thailand, in a remote village, and you grew up where grandma and grandpa and mom or dad and the people at the local temple are doing these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, you would think that these things are part of the Buddhist teachings because this is just how you grew up. But somebody coming from the outside looking in and being able to look at the original teachings of the Buddha, you can see that this isn't actually the original teachings. And there's pockets of Thai people here in Thailand that understand that, and they don't do rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. But you'll see the vast majority of the world doing some amount of rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, not understanding what the real issues are in the unenlightened mind. These things were going on during the lifetime of the Buddha too. During the lifetime of the Buddha, the people were convinced that they had to go visit these other individuals called Brahmin. What a Brahmin is a Brahmin is like a Hindu priest, and people are born into this class of family. And it's thought that if you're born into this family, that you're a pure person. And now the common people were taught that they had to go visit these Brahmin and they had to pay them money in order to do rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And then when you go home, your life was supposed to get better because you paid these people money. They did some rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship for you. And now your life was going to get better. But the Buddha knew that this doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. And it bred a lot of corruption, because today it might have been $5 for that ceremony and tomorrow it's going to be $10. And now people are like, hey, why? And it's like, oh, because I said so. And these people were convinced that they couldn't improve their life. They were taught the only way to improve your life is to go pay money to these Brahmin, and they're going to perform rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship for you. And when the Buddha came in and he started sharing his teachings, he was explaining to them that they needed to cultivate wisdom and make wiser decisions. And that was what was going to produce better results in their life, not these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. So today, a lot of places you will see rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship being performed, being attributed to the Buddha, but he actually didn't teach this. So he didn't teach the creation of statues and worshiping the statue or praying to him. You can't pray to the Buddha and experience some beneficial results in this life. It's about training your own mind and cultivating wisdom. The Buddha also didn't teach rules and commandments that everyone must follow, and this is what creates a peaceful world. This is typically what religion is there's an organization with one person at the top, and that person is disseminating teachings of telling people what they should or shouldn't do. There's typically rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship that's part of a religion, and there's going to typically be rules and commandments that are being followed. If this is the way that you think about religion, the teachings of the Buddha aren't a religion. Even though other people might consider it a religion, it's not a religion. The Buddha never said that he had discovered a new religion. When he awoke from enlightenment, he shared with people, I discovered a better way of life, because he figured out how to live this better way of life. So he didn't discover a new religion. He discovered a better way of life, of how to train the mind and awaken to this peaceful and joyful mental state. The teachings of the Buddha aren't punishments and rewards. That's not the way he taught, about a bunch of punishments and rewards that you would experience in this life or the future life. It's not mystical or magical or superstitious or auspicious. He teaches this as part of his teachings. He says that, there's nothing that's auspicious or superstitious about his teachings. His teachings aren't something that you can attempt to force or convince other people to do. So like when a teacher is teaching like this, I'm not trying to convince you to learn the teachings of the Buddha. I'm just sharing with you what the teachings of the Buddha are. And if you choose to learn them, I'm here to help you. I'm here to guide you. But I'm not here to convince you of that. You've got to decide for yourself what's right for your own life. So his teachings aren't something to attempt to force or convince other people to do. They're not short, catchy phrases that will produce some kind of benefit if you read those phrases, or some benefit in your life. If you get into Facebook or social media or places like this, you may see a bunch of short little catchy phrases that people will oftentimes attribute to the Buddha. From my experience, about 99.9% of these aren't even something that the Buddha said. It's something that somebody else said, and they're putting a picture of the Buddha into a little image and they're attributing it to the Buddha. So these short little catchy phrases that you see, they're most likely not even words of the Buddha. They're not even the way he taught. If you see the way the Buddha taught, understanding his teachings, he didn't teach with these short little catchy phrases. Also, his teachings aren't stuck in a cultural path or a cultural past that judges people or degrades people. Sometimes people think that the Buddha degraded women or talked down about women. This isn't actually true at all. It's really interesting if you hear this kind of talk from people about the teachings of the Buddha. Today, there might be people who think negatively of a certain gender or a certain sexual orientation or a certain ethnicity, and they might try to say the Buddha said these things, but you won't find anywhere in his teachings where he degrades anybody. He doesn't degrade women, he doesn't degrade men, he doesn't degrade any ethnicity. Instead, what he was teaching was love and kindness for all beings. You can see in the teachings of the Buddha where he's teaching a husband how to respect his wife. And he also teaches the wife how to respect the husband. He's teaching these kinds of things in his life. So if you run across any situation where people are denigrating women or anybody of a sexual orientation or anything like that, that's not what the Buddha actually taught. Here in Thailand, even in Chiang Mai, there's a particular temple here that sometimes people come to me and talk to me and they say, hey, there's this temple that if you're a woman, you can't go in that temple. Why did the Buddha teach this? And my answer is the Buddha didn't teach that. That's something that people nowadays are actually choosing to do. But the Buddha never taught those kinds of things. So if you see anything where people are denigrating people, The Buddha never taught that. He taught to have love and kindness and compassion, and be respectful and polite to all people. Okay, so any questions on any of that? Okay, I feel like I've been talking a lot. I probably have been. Let's see. So we've been talking for about an hour and a half, or at least an hour. We did meditation for a half an hour. So now what I plan to do with this course is take you guys into the very first teaching of the Buddha. But if you guys need a stretch break, if you need a little bit of a break, we can take a break, because I normally take a break. I intended, you heard me at the beginning, to not take a break during this course. But after talking and seeing you guys, maybe you guys need a little bit of a break from all this talking. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you guys would like to have a break? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, why don't we take a break? So it's about 20 minutes to 3. Why don't we take a 15-minute break and come back, just kind of 5 minutes before the hour, and I will teach you guys the Four Noble Truths, which is the very first teaching of the Buddha. This is where you're going to learn this breakthrough, finally understanding why your mind experiences anger and frustration and these discontent feelings, and then I will help you to understand how to eliminate them as well. So if you guys would like to take a little break, come back in about 15 minutes or so, and then I'll get started with that. Okay, so thank you guys for your questions, and thank you for being here. Okay. Okay, so it looks like pretty much everybody's made their way back. So thank you guys for coming back from break. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the very first teaching of the Buddha. This is a great introduction to you to understand what I've been talking about with learning, reflecting, and practicing, because I'm going to teach you the very first teachings of the Buddha that are going to help you have this breakthrough to finally understanding why your mind experiences these discontent feelings. And I'm going to help you to learn, I'm going to help you to reflect, and I'm going to help you to practice. So keep in mind that what I'm teaching you, you don't believe anything that I say. Don't believe anything I say. Don't believe anything that I write in books. You learn, you reflect, and you practice. And this is what's going to help you to awaken to the wisdom on this journey to enlightenment. So this Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha. This is what you're learning on your journey to enlightenment. You can think about the Eightfold Path like as if you had a speaker system and you had 8 individual dials. You would like to dial these 8 dials in closer and closer to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. Well, the same thing is true about your mind, is that there's these 8 factors that the Buddha taught. And what you're doing is you're dialing this into your life more and more, creating and developing this life practice where you now practice during life, right? Yes, there's meditation, but there's other things you need to practice as well. In this whole Eightfold Path is based on right view. That's the first step of the Eightfold Path. And I'm going to teach you right view here in a moment. But you can see here that it's broken down into 3 sections, which is wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. The reason why the Buddha teaches moral conduct is that you need to understand the cause and effect. You need to understand certain moral conduct that you have is producing a certain effect. There's a certain action and there's a certain result. This isn't rules or commandments or anything like that. He's showing you the things that you're doing in life through your speech, through your actions, and through your livelihood that are producing either wholesome results for you or unwholesome results for you. That's something that you can explore later in other courses and other programs. I'm going to be starting on Monday a 5-day course where you can attend here at the temple or you can attend online, or if you can't attend live, you can watch the recordings, where I'm going to be teaching all the foundational teachings of the path to enlightenment. And I'll go into each one of these factors individually, one by one. But here in our introduction course, I'm just going to do the first one, right view. But just understand that this moral conduct section is there because as long as you're putting harm out through your moral conduct, this harm is going to come back to you. So the Buddha teaches you the natural laws of how to speak in ways that would be wise so that it doesn't cause harm to others. So therefore, harm doesn't come back to you. He doesn't teach you about your personality or your character. That's for you to decide. Everybody's going to be different. But he teaches you the natural laws around moral conduct so that you can ensure that you're not causing harm through your speech or your actions or your livelihood. And by not causing harm, then you'll see more and more wholesome results coming back to you. And then he teaches you this mental discipline about how to train the mind and to be able to control the mind. Because when your mind's sad and angry and frustrated and all those other discontent feelings, you can't control the mind in that situation. So this Eightfold Path develops your wisdom, your moral conduct, and the mental discipline that is the path to enlightenment. When we talk about the path to enlightenment, it's the Eightfold Path. That's the path to enlightenment. So I'm going to introduce you to the right view and go through this in detail because everything else on the path to enlightenment is based on right view. If you didn't understand right view, you would have no ability to get to enlightenment whatsoever. So that's why I start students with right view. And that's where the Buddha started students too. When he taught, he would start with right view. To understand the Four Noble Truths, which is right view, you need to first understand the 3 universal truths. These are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. So I'm going to walk you through this so that you can learn it, you can reflect on it, and then you can practice it. We call them the 3 universal truths and the Four Noble Truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true. Other people know that they're true too. But in order for you to gain benefit of the 3 universal truths and the Four Noble Truths, you need to know that they're true. This is why you don't believe the teachings. You're going to need to learn them intellectually. You'll need to reflect on them and you'll need to practice. Here, let me show you what I mean by this. So this first universal truth of impermanence, I'm going to teach it to you. What this first universal truth is the Buddha explains to you that everything in the world around you is constantly changing. There isn't this fixed, steady state that things arise, they change, and they fade away. This is what's called a conditioned object. Remember, the Buddha is explaining to you the way the world is, right? He's explaining to you that everything around you is impermanent. It's constantly changing. This is called a conditioned object. There are things called unconditioned objects. Enlightenment is an unconditioned object, and the natural laws of existence are an unconditioned object. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. But everything else in the world around you is all impermanent. Okay, everything's constantly changing. So this is just a little bit of the intellectual learning about the universal truth of impermanence. But now you don't believe that. You start reflecting on it to try to independently verify with what I'm saying, is it true or false, right? So the way that you independently reflect on this is you look around the world. You try to find something that's permanent, right? I suggest you start with something like your physical body. Ask yourself, is this body permanent, meaning it's never changed and it's constantly the same? Or is this physical body impermanent, meaning it's constantly changing? What would you say? Is this body permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent. It's impermanent. What would you guys say? Is the body permanent, meaning it's always the same? Or is this body constantly changing? Constantly changing, right? It's impermanent. When we were born, we came into the world and our body was a certain shape, a certain size, and then it's changed, right? We've gotten bigger, we've got fatter, our skin color has changed, our hair color might have changed, we might have got gray hair, we might have started losing our hair. Some people lose their hair. We got teeth, and then the teeth fell out, and then we had new teeth come in, and then we got cavities. This is all changed. This is all impermanence. You get a mole, you get a pimple, right? The complexion of your skin changes. This is all impermanence. This physical body is impermanent. This body can't be permanently healthy. You can't have permanent health because this body is impermanent. It's going to be sick. You can't have permanent life. You're going to die because this body is impermanent, right? What arises, it changes, and it's going to fade away. This body is impermanent, okay? That's one thing you can look at. You can look at your relationships. Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? If they're permanent, that means you've had exactly the same people in your life, your entire life. Everybody's the same. If your relationships are impermanent, that means you've had people coming and going in and out of your life throughout your life. So would you say your relationships are permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, right? People have been coming and going in and out of your life your whole life. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? I heard impermanent. What do you guys think? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's going up and down and up and down and up and down. Some people's goes up, 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 up. Others people, we go down, 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 right? Your bank account is impermanent. It's constantly changing. What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? Impermanent? What would you guys say? Impermanent, right? It's sunny, it's raining. Some places it snows, tornadoes, typhoons, right? Tsunamis. Things are constantly changing. So we could go on and on and on and on. And if you need to, keep doing that, right? Look around the temple. You see the marks on the wall, the holes. This is all impermanence. You see the marks on the floor. This is all impermanence. You see that we have a certain people in this class now. We started the class, but this class is impermanent. It's going to end at some point. And some people might come and go out of the class, right? So things are constantly changing in your life. These things aren't permanent. You've had different jobs. You sleep in different places. You've had different boyfriends, different girlfriends, right? Things are constantly changing in your life. This is impermanent. So this is a fundamental teaching that you need to know and deeply understand. And if you don't understand this one yet, you're going to need to soak it into the mind. Walk down the street. Look at the sidewalk. When you see that crack in the sidewalk, that's impermanence. When you see the height of the sidewalk changing, like they often do here in Thailand, that's impermanence. When you see the shape and the color and the texture changing, this is impermanence, right? There's impermanence all around you. Right now, it's fairly quiet in here, but eventually there's going to be a car go by, or a dog's going to bark, or somebody's going to be hitting a hammer earlier when we were meditating, right? That's impermanence, right? The sounds are impermanent. The things that you see are impermanent. The things you smell, the things you taste, all the impermanence. Then the second universal truth, I refer to as discontentedness. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha other places, you might have heard people refer to this as suffering. I don't use the word suffering because it doesn't fully represent what the Buddha was describing with this universal truth. If you look at the original teachings of the Buddha, he uses the word dukkha. This is the Pali word. This Pali word dukkha is often translated as suffering, but myself and some other people, we translate it as discontent, discontented, and discontentedness. I'll explain to you what this universal truth is, then I'm going to circle back and explain to you why I don't use the word suffering. When the Buddha describes dukkha, he describes three feelings. He describes a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a feeling that is neither painful nor pleasant. He's explaining to you the way the mind is. He's explaining to you the unenlightened mind, that the unenlightened mind experiences pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. It also experiences painful feelings, sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. And it also experiences feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's quite painful for them. So, okay, you can put that in the painful category. But shyness is a good example. It's not painful, it's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Or if somebody you didn't know came and sat really, really close to you on public transportation, like on a bus or something, and your body's touching their body, your mind is probably uncomfortable. Your mind's probably dissatisfied in that situation. It's neither painful nor pleasant, right? It's not pleasant to have that situation occur perhaps for you right now, but it's not painful for you either. It's neither painful nor pleasant. So these are the three feelings that are described as discontent or discontented or discontentedness. These are conditioned feelings that the unenlightened mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. You look outside, you see it's sunny outside, you get so happy. Yay, it's sunny outside. We're going to go outside and play. Let's go play football. Let's go for a hike. Let's go anything, right? Let's go outside. It's so exciting. Yay, it's sunny outside. But now you go take a shower and you come back and now it's raining. Oh man, now I can't go outside. I can't go hiking. Man, I don't like this. The mind's frustrated. Because you formed a conditioned feeling of happiness based on the condition of the sun is not permanent. The sun is impermanent. So that means when you form that conditioned pleasant feeling of happiness, your happiness is impermanent. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness in your life, because you're forming your happiness based on some condition. If it's sunny, I'll be happy. If my bank account is this, I'll be happy. If my mom does this, I'll be happy. If my dad does this, I'll be happy. If my brothers and sisters do this, I'll be happy. But those are conditioned feelings, and those things aren't permanent. So if you form your conditioned feeling as if my bank account is this, I'll be happy, well then when the bank account does this, you'll be sad, because that condition is impermanent. It is impermanent. Or if you form your inner feelings of happiness based on the sun, well, as soon as the sun goes away, you're not happy anymore. These are what's called conditioned feelings. This is the problem in the unenlightened mind, is it's forming its inner feelings based on some condition, that the unenlightened mind is going up and down and up and down. It's only a matter of time before the mind experiences painful feelings. There's periods of time here and there where you might be peaceful and calm, but it's only a matter of time before your mind is sad or angry or irritated or annoyed, because the mind is forming its inner feelings based on some condition. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is beyond this. You're not experiencing conditioned feelings anymore. You're experiencing the unconditioned mental qualities of peace, of calmness, of serenity, of contentedness, of joy. You have unconditioned happiness. So in that example of the unenlightened being waking up and seeing it's sunny and getting happy and excited, then go take a shower and come back and they're sad or frustrated, an enlightened being is already happy before they ever woke up. And now when they wake up, they're already happy. They're already joyful because it's unconditioned joy. They're not happy because of anything. The mind is purified. The mind is experiencing unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy. And now they see it's sunny outside. Sweet. Let's go hiking. Let's go play football. Let's go outside and play, right? Now the enlightened being goes, takes a shower, and they come out and they say it's raining. Oh, okay, it's raining, so guess I can't go hiking. Maybe we'll go to the mall. Maybe I'll invite my friends over. I'll do some cooking and I'll cook some dinner for them. Or maybe I'll just stay home and read a book. You can maintain your joy. You can maintain your happiness because you didn't base your happiness on the sun. So now when the sun is gone, you can still maintain your joy. You can still maintain your happiness. But if your mind is basing its inner feelings on the condition of the sun, because the sun is impermanent, your happiness is impermanent too. It's going to change. It's going to move to the sadness or frustration. I'm going to explain to you the reason why this is occurring when we get to the Four Noble Truths. But here in the second universal truth, the Buddha is explaining the unenlightened mind to you. He's helping you understand what the unenlightened mind experiences. So now that's the learning part. But now do the reflection. You've got to independently verify whether this is true or false. Well, you know that your mind is unenlightened. So now you take something like this and you say, okay, the Buddha says that you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. So try to think about all the different feelings that you've experienced in your life. Does this explain what you experience? Do you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant? Is there any feeling that you've experienced that doesn't fit into one of these three categories? So you can reflect on your own direct experiences and you can see that your mind is experiencing these three feelings. If you can't see that, when we get to the question period, let me know and I will help you to understand. Okay, so that's how you independently reflect on this and see that this is indeed describing the unenlightened mind, that it experiences pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. Now, what some people translate this to be is suffering. People will say the Buddha taught suffering as the second universal truth. But I don't use this word because to me, the word suffering explains the painful feelings really well. When you experience sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, you'd probably say you were suffering. But when you're excited, when you're elated, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering. Or if that person you don't know came and sat close to you on the bus and your body was touching their body, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering in that situation. Your mind's discontent. Your mind's discontented or it's experiencing discontentedness, but it's not suffering when you're experiencing pleasant feelings and neither painful nor pleasant. So if we use the word suffering here, then we're only explaining 33% of what the Buddha talked about. That means you're missing 66% of his teachings. And if you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings, you're not going to be able to get to the ultimate goal, which is the enlightened mind. So here I use the word discontent, discontented, and discontentedness. And I would encourage you to do the same thing. So if you're reading things about the teachings of the Buddha, if you replace the word suffering with discontentedness, it'll help you come to a better understanding of his teachings. Then there's this third universal truth, which is the universal truth of non-self. This is actually a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. He discovers what's called the 10 fetters. These 10 fetters are 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind. We call it a fetter because during ancient times, what they would do is they would put a fetter around your ankle to keep you trapped as a prisoner. They didn't have cells like we have now. We have jail cells. Back then, what they would do is they put a shackle around your ankle. They would have a chain and they would have a ball. And this would keep you trapped in a certain area as a prisoner. Well, these 10 fetters or 10 pollutions or 10 taints or 10 defilements are what's keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state. And what you're doing on the journey to enlightenment is you're understanding these 10 fetters and you're uprooting them and eliminating them from the mind to be able to purify it and get to this enlightened mental state. That craving, anger, and ignorance, the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires, is a summary of the 10 fetters. The 10 fetters is a much deeper detail of what's going on in the unenlightened mind. So the very first fetter is referred to as personal existence view. This is the first pollution or the taint or the defilement. What this is this is where the mind in the unenlightened state has this pollution of personal existence view where it clings to this body and or this mind, thinking that this is who you are. There's a certain self-image or a certain self-identity that the mind is clinging to and thinking that this is who you are. And as long as your mind is clinging to this personal existence view, you'll get shaken up in certain situations. So for example, say you're clinging to this body, this self-image, thinking that this is who you are. Now, if you're in a social situation and you spill chocolate ice cream or pizza sauce on your clothing, you'll get embarrassed because you're not being perceived in the world in the way that you want to be perceived. The mind's clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are. And now when you go out into the world and you spill spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream on your clothes, you feel embarrassed. That embarrassment is the discontentedness. And the problem is that the mind's clinging to this self-image, thinking that this is who you are. Or say you get a pimple or a mole and you go out, you go to work or you go to a social situation. You might feel diminished or you might feel embarrassed because of that. Or if you're getting gray hair or a wrinkle, you might look in the mirror and you might feel shaken up because of this, right? This is what can happen. Or if you're losing your hair, or if you've ever stood in the mirror as a child, maybe, and like did your hair and had to be perfect. I know I did when I was growing up, right? As a teenager, I would have the mousse and I would have the gel in there. And sometimes it'd take me 15, 20, 30 minutes before I could go out of the house. I had to have the hair looking exactly a certain way before I would go outside. This is the personal existence view, wanting to be perceived in the world a certain way. The mind's clinging to the self-image or the self-identity. And now if somebody says something about your self-image and they compliment you, wow, you look so beautiful in that dress, or wow, that color of that shirt brings out the color of your eyes. You look so handsome. You might get these pleasant feelings based on the condition of somebody saying something positive about this self-image. And because you're clinging to this self-image, you'll get these conditioned pleasant feelings. But now it's only a matter of time, because of impermanence, that somebody's going to say something negative or degrading or diminishing about the self-image. Someone's going to say, oh, you look so horrible in those white clothes. Why would you ever wear white clothes? You're so stupid. Whoa. Well, if you're clinging to this body and this self-image, thinking that this is who you are, you'll feel angry. You'll feel frustrated in that situation because you think this is who you are. And then there's a self-identity that the mind clings to. Maybe your culture, your ethnicity, maybe your nationality, your sexual orientation, your job or your occupation. You might think that this is who you are. Like, I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Italian, or I am French, or I am a Brit, or I am Aussie, or I am Chinese, or I am any number of things, right? I am a Buddhist teacher, right? Or your culture, your ethnicity, your nationality, your sexual orientation, your job, your occupation. I am a police officer. I am a construction worker. I am a taxi driver. Well, now you're out at a restaurant and 2 tables over, you hear somebody talking negative and degrading about your nationality. Maybe they're degrading people from Canada or America or China or taxi drivers or police officers or something like this. And now you get angry, you get frustrated because your mind identifies with this is who you are as a person, that I am American. But you can understand that this body was born in America, but I am not American. The mind doesn't identify that way. And now you can protect your mind. Because if somebody says something complimentary about American people, okay, that's fine. But if they say something degrading and disparaging, they're not talking about me because I'm not American, right? This body was born in America, but I'm not American. So if the personal existence view is in the mind, it's going to cling to the self-image and the self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And now you'll get shaken up. Like, say you think that I am a police officer, and now you do that job for a period of time, and then you retire after 40 years, you'll feel like a part of you is missing. You'll feel like a part of you is gone when you're no longer a police officer. When you retire, it'll be really challenging for you because you've identified with I'm a police officer all these years. And now when you experience that impermanence, you don't feel whole. You don't feel complete. People come to Thailand all the time on this journey to find themselves. Right? They don't even know who they are anymore, perhaps. Somebody might say this, I need to go to Thailand and find myself. I need to find my true self. I don't even know who I am anymore. Well, you can't find yourself, because what the universal truth of non-self is the Buddha saying there is no self. There is no you. Someone might come to Thailand and they might find new friends, they might find new hobbies, they might find a new job or occupation, but they're not going to find themselves because it doesn't exist. This body isn't you. It's not who you are. This mind is not you. It's not who you are. But the challenge in the unenlightened state is all through our life, from the time of birth until now, people have given you certain labels. Like I was given the label of David. I am David. And now there's a certain self-image or certain self-identity that gets attracted to that starts to form. And now the mind can only feel content and peaceful if that's intact. If you start to experience any kind of impermanence related to your job or your occupation, your nationality, you start experiencing all this impermanence where people are degrading or disparaging this body or this mind, you'll be shaken up. And you can't control what other people say or what other people do. You can only control your own mind. So as long as your mind is clinging to this body or clinging to this mind or clinging to this self-image or clinging to this identity in the mind, it's only a matter of time before somebody says something degrading and disparaging, and you'll get shaken up by it. So the Buddha gives you the solution to this, which is to realize non-self, to realize that this body nor this mind is you. It's not who you are. And this body and this mind is going to be constantly changing. But if you're holding on to it, clinging to it, wanting it to be permanent, when you get a little bit of extra fat, when you get a gray hair, when you get a pimple, when you get a wrinkle, you'll be shaken up. When you get some spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream on your clothing, you'll be shaken up. Or if somebody says something negative or degrading about some identity that you're holding on to in your mind, you'll get shaken up. So you can get liberated from those feelings by realizing non-self. And this is where the training comes in, that you need to train and you need to practice. What I'm doing so far is I'm sharing with you the intellectual understanding of this universal truth, is that there is no self. There is no you there. There is a body. There is a mind. It's come together for this existence, and we refer to it as a person. But none of that is you. It's not who you are. But the challenge is that the unenlightened mind is confused. It has misunderstanding. It thinks that this is you. So this is a little bit of the intellectual learning. Now let's reflect on this so you can independently verify that there is no self. I'm going to give you 3 different things that you can reflect on. The first one, think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and now. Think about your character and your personality and how you viewed yourself. Has it been constantly the same? Childhood, teenager, early adulthood, and now? Or has your view of yourself been constantly changing? Right? You can think about that. Have you viewed yourself exactly the same way, meaning there is a self and it's permanent? Or have you been viewing yourself differently from childhood to teenage years to early adult years and now? Most likely you're going to say, yeah, it's been constantly changing. I've been viewing myself differently through all these stages of life. So this is one way you can verify that there is no self. The second way you can verify it is, say that your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and you have one arm. Are you less of a person because you only have one hand and one arm? Are you less of a person? Yes or no? No, you're not less of a person? What would you guys say? No? What would you guys say? No? You're shaking your head no? You less of a person? No. So there, intellectually, you understand that this body is not you. Because if this body was you, when I asked you this question, if your arm is amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? You would say, yes, I'm less of a person. Intellectually, you understand that this body isn't you, but the mind is confused in a situation where somebody says something negative and degrading about this body. Because of your confusion, because of the misunderstanding, because of that ignorance or that unknowing of true reality, the mind gets angry. It gets frustrated because you think this body is you. right? But this body isn't you. You just intellectually confirm that, right? But the mind's confused and it has misunderstanding in the unenlightened state. And here's a third way you can confirm that there is no self. Point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point? Where are you? Okay, sometimes people point here, some people point here, people point here, right? Okay, so let's look at what we're pointing at. Let's literally look at what we're pointing at. If I point here and I say, I am right here, what am I pointing at? Pointing at a shirt. Is this shirt you? That shirt you're wearing, is that you? Is that who you are? If I took off this shirt and I held it up, is that me? Is that who I am? You're saying no? Is that shirt me? Is that who you are? The shirt you're wearing? No, you're not, right? Okay, so let's throw away the shirt. Let's get rid of the shirt. Where are you? Where are you? Can you point? Someone might point again. They say, I'm right here. What are they pointing to? Remember, the shirt's gone. What are they pointing to? They're pointing to skin. There's skin there. Okay, let's take off the skin. Hold up the skin. Is that you? Is that who you are? That skin that you've got? Is that you? No? Okay, so let's throw away the skin. Where are you? Point to where are you? Someone might point again. Okay, what do we got? We've got ribs, we've got bones, we've got muscle tissue, we've got organs, we've got fluid. What part of that is you? None of it's you. It's just bits and pieces and parts. But the unenlightened mind is going to cling to this body, thinking that this is you. And that's the dilemma. That's the difficulty that the unenlightened mind's having. That's the confusion, the misunderstanding. As long as you think this body is you, when somebody says something complimentary about this body, you'll get pleasant feelings. But then, because of impermanence, it's only a matter of time before someone says something negative and degrading. And now you'll be angry and you'll be frustrated. So this is the three universal truths to get you started. These are building blocks. But now I'm going to transition into talking about the Four Noble Truths. But before I do, I'd like to see if there's any questions here on any of these three before we move on. So here at the temple, if you could use the mics, and those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically. So any questions on any of these three? Yes, ma'am. You're welcome to take those back to your seat. Are the batteries worn out? Batteries are impermanent. Never know. The Buddhist teachings explain microphones.
Well, I would have so many questions about all this part, but now the one more strong, like about the self.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have a certain, other teaching say that we're not the body, we're not the mind, but what we are is our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So the observer.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, it seems you're saying we are nothing. So
the consciousness is just another word for the mind. So you're not any of those things. You're not the consciousness, you're not the observer, you're not the body, none of those things. So when you look at the teachings of the Buddha and you reflect on this for yourself, you can get to a point where you realize that you aren't this body and you aren't this mind.
So what we are?
This is the common question, right? The unenlightened mind is going to keep trying to grasp. Well, if I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, then what am I? You're nothing. There is no you there. But the mind keeps wanting to grasp at something. It wants to keep holding on to something. It wants to find something. I've got to be something, right? Well, the Buddha is teaching you the universal truth of non-self, so you eliminate the clinging to this body, and you eliminate the clinging to your mind, so you realize that this isn't you. There is no you there. That's the words of the Buddha. That there is a body in existence, there is a mind that exists, and they've come together, and we call this a person. Some people call it the observer. The Buddha calls it the person. These two things coming together, the body and the mind coming together, is called the person. But that's not you. It's not who you are. And the challenge is that all throughout your life, you've been taught that you've got to go out into the world and be somebody. You've got to take on this identity and this label and this role. In fact, the countries that we come from, they're heavily invested in us feeling like I am American, right? We say the Pledge of Allegiance, we have national anthems, we have flags. They want us to identify that way because then we'll invest in the local economy, we'll buy real estate, we'll build up the country. But what the Buddha is explaining to you is none of that is you. But your mind's going to keep wanting to grasp for a you and keep trying to find something until you realize that there is no self. Okay, done?
Yeah,
okay.
I might
You got
not
more?
think the same way, but I understand what you are saying.
I'm sorry?
I might have a different opinion, but I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so the more that you peer into this, the more you can see the truth. I realize that right now you might have a different opinion, but as long as your mind clings and holds on to that, you're not going to be able to understand what the Buddha is teaching you and get to liberation. As long as you hold on to this body and as long as you hold on to this mind, thinking that this is you, your mind will be discontent. You won't get to enlightenment as long as you cling to it. So the path to enlightenment isn't about hearing a teacher teach and then you decide whether you agree with me or not. The path to enlightenment is, okay, you would like to learn about what it takes to get to enlightenment. And then when you hear something that you don't fully understand, you ask questions until you understand, or maybe you need to have a follow-up conversation because there's certain things that your mind's holding on to right now that are false. That's why you experience anger and frustration and irritation and annoyance and all these other discontent feelings, because your mind doesn't have full wisdom about these natural laws and about these teachings. So you're going to have different opinions on a lot of things that you learn on the path to enlightenment. If you come to a class and everything that a teacher is sharing, you already know, you already understand, and you already agree with it, that teacher is useless. But if you're in a class, if you're in a program where you're learning things that you disagree with and that you have a different opinion of, that's really good. That's wonderful for you to be in that environment because now you can get clarification because there's certain things that you're not understanding, which is as long as you hold on to those misunderstandings, your mind can awaken to the wisdom that you need in order to get to liberation and get to enlightenment. So I'm sure you have a different opinions on many things that the Buddha taught. That's why your mind is unenlightened, and that's why his mind was enlightened. That's why he had the peace and the joy, and you don't have that yet because your mind has false opinions and false views and lack of wisdom. But you can get to that wisdom if you choose to do the work and learn to let go of what your mind's currently holding on to. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you guys can get mics. You can hold that in case you have other questions too. I'm not sure that one's on. Can you turn that one off? Oh, you can share if you like, but we have multiple mics, so that way you guys don't have to walk back and forth.
So, well, I have more in my disconsciousness conditioned feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about neither painful nor pleasant, like these feelings. For example, I travel and I have been here in different countries and now here living, and this is like, then you settle down and you live like normal as the way you were living in another country, and again these feelings comes up more. These feelings, like I said, like more these neither painful nor pleasant feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is the goal? For example, if we have these feelings and you say, for example, we are like nothing, we are nothing here. So what is the goal if we are having constantly these feelings?
Yeah, so in the unenlightened state, you're going to have these conditioned feelings. But when you purify the mind of the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings, you can get to the point where your mind is peaceful and joyful permanently. That you no longer experience these conditioned feelings because you've uprooted the conditions that are causing these feelings to occur. That's the next thing that I'm going to show you with the Four Noble Truths. I'm going to show you the cause of these feelings. Mm-hmm. So the point of the path to enlightenment is to purify your mind of the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings, so that then you can get to the permanent peace and the permanent joy. And you don't need to be burdened by these feelings any longer. Okay, let me just check online, see if we have any questions here. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online. Oh, there we go. We have one from Rachel. Go ahead, ma'am.
David, you just mentioned that permanent joy or permanent peace. So when one becomes an enlightenment being, so the joy and peace will be permanent. Is this against one of the three universal truths, impermanence? Or can I understand that enlightenment is permanent?
Sure. So the universal truth of impermanence is explaining that all conditioned objects are impermanent. Conditioned object will arise, it will change, and it will fade away. That's what the universal truth of impermanence is explaining, in that everything in the material world around you is impermanent because it's a conditioned object. But there's also what's called unconditioned objects. An unconditioned object, it doesn't arise, it doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. So the unenlightened mind is conditioned. It has certain conditions, pollutions, that are causing these discontent feelings to arise. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you've purified your mind of those conditions. The mind is now unconditioned. It's a purified mind. It's an unconditioned mind. So because the unconditioned mind doesn't have causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings, the peace and the joy is unconditioned, meaning there doesn't need to be any condition to produce the peace and joy. So those mental qualities are permanent because they're not based on any condition. It's only conditioned, a mind, a conditioned that is going to then experience conditioned feelings or conditioned experiences. But the unconditioned mind, which is enlightened, is now going to experience the permanent peace and permanent joy because it's now experiencing the unconditioned mental qualities of peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy.
And I have another question that is about the word choice, discontent or discontentedness. Could you help me better understand, like pleasant feelings? Because for pleasant feelings, I think it's content. Or how can I understand it, pleasant feelings, as discontent?
Yeah. Have you ever been so excited you like fell down or tripped and fell, or you dropped something and broke it? Have you ever had that? You had that experience, right? So that's because your mind was discontent. Your mind was discontented. It was shaken up. It was so excited you like tripped and fell, or you dropped something and you broke it. So the pleasant feelings is what the mind understands in the unenlightened state, that you chase after those pleasant feelings. That's what we're about to talk about here in a minute. And the mind thinks that, I got what I wanted. I got the new boyfriend and new girlfriend, or I got the new car, or I got more money. I got my pleasant feelings. But the mind doesn't understand in the unenlightened state that this is part of the problem. The conditioned pleasant feelings is part of the problem. That because the mind formed its inner feelings of happiness based on the condition of having this new job, when that job is over and I get fired or I get laid off or the company goes out of business, now you're going to be sad. As soon as you form your inner feeling of happiness based on some condition, that condition is not permanent. So therefore, you're going to end up in the painful feelings. So you need to be able to see the conditioned pleasant feelings as part of the problem. And what you would like to do is get to the unconditioned mental qualities of the peace and joy and happiness, the unconditioned happiness, where your mind can just always be happy, but it's unconditioned. It's not based on any condition. It's only conditional happiness that is temporary. Unconditional happiness is permanent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So now let me share with you one more building block to help you understand before I explain to you the Four Noble Truths of why your mind experiences discontentedness. This is called craving, desire, attachment. This is expectations, wants, holding, grasping, clinging. This is your mind having longing and yearning and chasing after the objects of your affection. So if you've ever been in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes, and you're like, yes, brand new pair of shoes. Oh, I can't wait to get those shoes. That's the mind longing and yearning and chasing after something. Or if it's like, oh, boyfriend, girlfriend, that's what I need in this world. That's what I'm going to feel better about. Oh, I need a boyfriend or girlfriend, or husband or wife. That's what I need. I need that boyfriend or girlfriend, or I need that new car or that new job. This is the mind thinking that something outside of itself is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases after this. It's like almost obsessed in some situations. It's where the mind thinks the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. This is the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you experienced this? Yeah? Yeah, you've experienced it, right? The mind is craving and longing and yearning. It's like an unquenchable thirst. The mind always wants something else. Okay? So now I'm going to explain to you the Four Noble Truths in a way that you can independently verify this. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem in the unenlightened mind. The problem is everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. So the discontentedness is alerting you and showing you that your mind is unenlightened. That when you're angry or sad or irritated or frustrated or annoyed or agitated or any other thing like that, that's the discontentedness. That's the mind experiencing the problem. The problem is those discontent feelings. Then the second noble truth is explaining the cause of this problem. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments. Because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world around you is impermanent. These material things are all impermanent. So I'm going to say this a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples. So those discontent feelings, the pleasant feelings, the painful feelings, and the feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant, they're caused by craving, desire, attachment. The mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection. If you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. If you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. The mind's craving permanence. It's wanting things to be permanent, but yet you live in an impermanent world. This is that ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. The mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It doesn't understand that everything around you is impermanent. So the unenlightened mind just keeps craving permanence, wanting things to be a certain way. So let me give you some examples. Say you get a new boyfriend or new girlfriend. When you guys first got together, things couldn't have been better. You just got together, you got all these pleasant feelings, you're so happy, you're so excited, someone's showing you some affection, they're inviting you out to dinner, to the movies, you're going to the park, having great conversations, you might even be having intimate contact. You're having all these pleasant feelings based on the condition of having a new boyfriend or new girlfriend. But now you go for a period of time and your expectations start growing and their expectations start growing. You start getting angry and frustrated and irritated with each other. And now you guys break up and the relationship's over. And now you're angry, you're frustrated. You might feel lonely. You might feel bored, right? This is the mind craving permanence, wanting this person to be permanent. When in reality, this relationship was always impermanent. The mind just didn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. Say you have a grandma or grandpa who dies. Grandma and grandpa dies. If you grieve or you're sad, you're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong. But it's not the love that's causing you to grieve or to be sad. It's your mind craving permanence. You're wanting grandma and grandpa to be permanent. Mom or dad, brothers and sisters or friends. But they are impermanent. Because they were born, they have to die. If you've ever been to a wedding and you've cried, or the people around you were crying at your wedding, right? They weren't crying because they were truly upset. Yes, they were angry, or not angry, they were sorrowful, right? They're having these painful feelings. It's not because of the love. It's not because they love you that they were experiencing those feelings. It's because of the craving. It's the holding on, wanting you to be permanent. And now when you go off in the world in this wedding ceremony, it's like, hey, they're not permanent. They're not going to be with me permanently. They're going off with somebody else. This is the mind holding on, wanting permanence. Or if you've ever been dropped off at college or university and you or your parents were crying, this is because the mind's holding on, wanting permanence. Or say you have a brand new car and you bought this brand new car and you get all these pleasant feelings, and now you go take it and you park it at a store and you go inside and you come outside and you see a scratch on your car. If you get frustrated or irritated in that situation, it's not the scratch that's causing that. It's not the person who scratched your car that's causing the frustration. What's causing the discontentedness is the craving, the desire, the wanting this car to be permanently beautiful. The mind is wanting this car to be permanent, when in reality, this car is impermanent. The paint's going to fade. The upholstery is going to get ripped or torn. The window washers are going to break. The tires are going to need to be changed. This car is impermanent. But as long as you want it to be permanent and you're longing and yearning and craving for it to be permanent, your mind will be discontent. You'll be frustrated and irritated. So your mind is doing this with any number of cravings, desires, attachments. If your bank account is this, the mind's getting what it wants, you will be happy. But if the bank account is this, your craving is not being fulfilled. You're not getting what you want. So the mind's angry or sad or frustrated. So it's the craving, the desire, the attachment, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things to be a certain way. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. And if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings. And because of the mind's misunderstanding of what's truly causing its discontentedness, it will tend to push people away out of your life, thinking that that solves the problem. When you experience painful feelings, you might push people out of your life, or you push the situation out of your life. Or you might become bitter and harsh and hostile towards someone, thinking that's going to solve the problem. Or you might put your expectations on somebody, thinking that if you can get them to do what you want, that this will solve the problem. But this is like trying to teach 8 billion people in the world to do things your way, and you can't do that. So none of this actually solves the problem, because mom and dad isn't the problem. They might have problems themselves, but they are not what's causing you to be angry or frustrated, or your brothers or your sisters or your boss or your coworkers. That's not what's causing you to be frustrated. So if you push people out of your life, it doesn't solve the problem. That's why you get angry and irritated and annoyed again. And if you're bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, that doesn't solve the problem either. And if you put your expectations on people, that doesn't solve the problem either, because you can't get people to permanently do things your way. You can't train 8 billion people to do things your way. So as long as your mind has craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning, expectations, wants, in some situations, you're going to get what you want and you get pleasant feelings. But because of impermanence, you're going to sometimes not get what you want. And now you're going to get painful feelings. And this is the cause of these discontent feelings, is the cravings, desires, attachments. So this is the little bit of teaching on the second noble truth. Now, don't believe me. Reflect on it. Try to independently verify it for yourself. Think about the last time you were happy or excited or elated, or think about the last time you were irritated or annoyed or frustrated. At that time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else for your frustration or your agitation. That's typically what the unenlightened mind will do, is it'll blame somebody else for the feelings that they're experiencing. But now with this new wisdom, with this fresh eyes, look at that situation. What was it that your mind wanted? That if you would have got what you wanted, you would have got pleasant feelings. You would have been happy or excited. But because you didn't get what you want, you got angry or frustrated or irritated. You should be able to reflect on your own experiences and be able to see this to be true. If you can't see it, let me know. Ask me questions. I will help you. I've had students say, hold on a second. I went to work the other day and I was gone for like 10 hours, and I came home and my wife had the house a complete wreck. She had this craft project that she was working on and things were spread out all over the house. And I came home and I got frustrated. How did my mind cause these discontent feelings? I wasn't even there. Because what I'm explaining to you is that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. And the person's like, how did I cause my own frustration? I wasn't even there. I just walked in and boom, I got frustrated. Well, their mind was craving for the house to look one particular way permanently. When they went to work, the house looked a certain way. And in their mind, the house should always look that way. They're craving permanence. And then when they came home and the house looked different, they didn't like that impermanence because their mind's craving permanence. When they saw that impermanence, their mind didn't understand it. They didn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. So this frustration arose because it wasn't getting what it wanted. The mind wanted the house to look this way. And if it would have looked that way, they would have been happy. But the house can't look that way permanently. It's not possible because of the universal truth of impermanence. So as long as the mind's craving permanence about anything, you will become discontent at some point. It's only a matter of time. So you can look at your own experiences and you can independently verify this to be true. You can develop and establish what's called right view. What right view is to have the right view that your mind is causing its own discontent feelings. What wrong view is would be to blame other people, that it's other people that are causing you to be angry. And as long as you have wrong view, you'll never solve your problem because you'll just push people away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or you'll put your expectations on people because you think the problem is outside of you. But when you can understand that the problem is inside the mind, now you can apply the tools and techniques to uproot these cravings, desires, attachments, and you can get to liberation. You can get to freedom from strong feelings. If it's everybody else that's causing you to feel a certain way, then you've got to train 8 billion people to do things your way. But if you can come to terms with this and be able to see the truth that your mind is causing its own discontent feelings, this is very empowering because now you only need to train one mind. And if you can train just one mind, you can get to the peace and to the joy. Do you know whose mind you need to train? Whose mind do you need to train? Right? Is that what you're doing? You're pointing to yourself, right? You need to train your own mind. Right? If you try to go out and train 8 billion people to do things your way, you'll never get to peace because it's not possible for those 8 billion people to permanently do things your way. But you can train one mind, and that's going to be challenging enough to train one mind, right? So what you do is in the third noble truth is you eliminate discontentedness by eliminating your cravings, your desires, your attachments, the longing, the yearning. It's the breathing mindfulness meditation and the generosity that's going to train your mind to let go. And there's other techniques that you need too, but you need to train your mind to let go because with craving, desire, attachment in the mind, it's going to hold on to things very tightly. So when you're in meditation and your mind's moving off the breath and you're training it to let go, let go, let go, let go, that's really helpful. You're building the quality in daily life to let go. So you're not holding on to things so tightly. And the same thing when you practice generosity, when you're giving and sharing with people without any expectation of anything in return, you're training the mind to let go. That's why we practice generosity. If you're in Thailand for any amount of time, you probably see a lot of generosity being practiced in different places. If you're eating at a restaurant and free fruit shows up at the end of your meal, this is the generosity. Or if you're taking a taxi somewhere and they give you a free bottle of water, this is them practicing generosity, training their mind to let go. Because when you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you'll tend to be very selfish and you'll hold on to things very tightly. So you need to be able to practice generosity to train the mind to let go. So that's one of the trainings that we use is breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity. But the fourth noble truth is actually explaining the full solution. It's the Eightfold Path. The core central teaching of the Buddha is what's going to train your mind to get to enlightenment. There's 8 individual factors, and each of these factors are designed to help you eliminate your craving, desire, attachment. And when you peer into this really closely using the original words of the Buddha, you can see how he's teaching you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And it's helping you to train your mind to let go of craving, desire, attachment. So what an individual will do is learn each one of these steps and dial them in closer and closer and closer. And it's all based on right view. Right view is your mind is causing its own discontent feelings. Wrong view is that it's other people that are causing you to be discontent. As long as you have wrong view, you won't be able to eliminate your discontent feelings because it's everyone else that's causing it. They should all be here at the temple. your mind's already peaceful, right? But if you understand right view, then you understand like, okay, I need to work on my mind. I need to do this inner work. I need to be introspective and train my mind. And it's the Eightfold Path that's going to give you the complete, perfect plan of how to do that training. So what this path to enlightenment is what I started with towards the beginning of class, is what the teachings of the Buddha are, is to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. So what you're doing is understanding what's causing these feelings so you can uproot those causes and conditions. And then when you uproot these out of the mind, that's when you can get to the peace and to the joy. You eliminate those pollutions of the mind. And there's people during the lifetime of the Buddha that got to this as early as age 7. Even children can learn the teachings of the Buddha and uproot these causes and conditions and get to the point where their mind's completely peaceful and completely joyful. Their mind's not shaken up. And this is one of the best gifts you could ever help somebody to accomplish. This is why I choose to share these teachings, is to help people to understand how to accomplish this enlightened mental state. Adults can accomplish this, and even children can get to the same mental state as well. So that way you don't need to keep experiencing sadness and sorrow and grief and misery and despair throughout your life. But it takes some work. It's not 1 week, it's not 1 month, it's not even 1 year. It took the Buddha 6 years to get to enlightenment. It's going to take some time. But with gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, you can gradually get to this point where the mind's liberated from these strong feelings. Okay? Any questions on anything that I've shared so far? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. If the ones aren't working, yeah, you set them on the ground, then it will change the batteries. Lots of impermanence, huh? They're not working? Got one.
Found it.
Probably want to go back here, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it made me think like, okay, I met during my life, I met various times people that said something that made me think. Because for me, for my experience, it sounds true. But I see also different people have different mindset. So they have a different perception of life. And so they said, like, but what problem you have with suffering? Like, that Buddhists have problem with suffering, but suffering is part of life. And I spoke with these people who seem content, and they just have they have the emotion, they accept that, the suffering, the happiness, they say, it's part of life. And when they said me that, it made me think like, actually, I feel it's true also. In this way, this point of view is also true. And in a way, it sounds like to don't fully live when we reject the suffering, or like we want to be always peaceful, and they instead are having life experience because they have all the ups and downs and all the things of life, and they are content with that, they accept it. So yeah, just made me think.
So you can accept the premise that you're angry, you're frustrated, you're irritated, you're annoyed, you're feeling.
Yeah, I have
an individual human being can accept the understanding that, okay, as a human being, you experience annoyment, disappointment, frustration, agitation. You can accept that and adopt that kind of thinking that, okay, I'm human, this is the human condition, I'm going to experience these feelings. And you'll continue to experience those feelings for the rest of this life and future lives as well. Or you can choose to see the truth that you can eradicate these feelings from the mind. You don't need to live with anger and sadness and frustration and agitation and annoyance. You can completely eliminate that from your mind and experience the peace and joy for the rest of your life. It's a choice that each individual chooses to make. If you're interested in eliminating these discontent feelings, that's what the teachings of the Buddha are there for, and they will guide you in how to eliminate them. But as an unenlightened being, yes, you will experience those discontent feelings. But in my opinion, it's very unwise to relegate yourself to the thinking of, okay, I'm human, so this is the human condition, so I'm just going to experience this for the rest of my life. You can aspire for a better and improved life and learn this better way of life if you choose. But it's an individual choice for each person to make.
Okay, I see. I was also thinking, I see like kind of two different levels in the second and third noble truth, because like, okay, the craving, desire, attachment, it happened because we want everything permanent. But as I was making the example of these people, once there is acceptance of the impermanence of the emotion also, then there is no problem.
I'm sorry, that last part?
Like,
once there's acceptance of the emotion.
Yeah, there can be also on the like upside down, like that. If we accept the fact of craving, desire, attachment, and all that ups and down, then so we accept the impermanence of our feeling. Then there is no problem.
No, the problem is the discontent feelings. When your mind is experiencing discontentedness, the mind is uncalm, it's shaken up. And because your mind's uncalm and shaken up, you don't have mindfulness or awareness of mind in that situation. And then you don't have concentration or focus. And now because of that, you can't access your wisdom and make wise decisions that produce wholesome results in your life. So for example, if you have an attachment to your mom, for example, like you can have a relationship without an attachment, but people haven't learned how to do this in the unenlightened state. So if someone has an attachment to their mom, for example, and they get a phone call that their mom's been in a terrible accident and now they're on the way to the hospital, with your mind shaken up, you might hurry up and grab your car keys and run out the door, try to run and hurry up and get to the hospital, and you might get into a car accident yourself. Or at the very least, you're going to show up to the hospital with your mind shaken up and be unable to make wise decisions when you're talking to the doctors and the nurses to help your mom. So your mind's shaken up. The discontent feelings are the problem. And the cause of that problem is the craving, the desire, wanting mom to be permanently healthy when it's not possible for mom to be permanently healthy. But with a craving in the mind, wanting things to be a certain way, when mom's healthy, you'll be happy. When mom's unhealthy, you'll be sad or frustrated. Your mind's otherwise shaken up. And now you're going to have difficulties making decisions that are going to produce wholesome results for yourself. So what the Buddha is providing you is a path to get to the point where the mind's free of all these strong feelings, so that now you can maintain your joy and your happiness despite what's going on in the world. You're not joyful because mom's injured or unhealthy. You can maintain your joy despite that she's unhealthy. And now you can calmly make your way to the hospital. You can listen to the nurses and the doctors, and you can make wise decisions that's going to help her. But as long as you've got discontentedness in your mind and the mind's shaken up, you can't do that, because you don't have the permanent peace and the permanent joy, the permanent stability and the calmness and composure in the mind. Question?
So discontentedness is just a feeling. So it's if we don't get self-absorbed in it and like cut it off at bodily sensation or thoughts, then it will be gone, is what you say?
So you're referring to the 4 foundations of mindfulness, right? So this is a teaching that you learn when you learn the Eightfold Path. There's something called the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that the Buddha is sharing with you what you're going to experience before the mind becomes discontent, so that you can take action to revert or dismantle these conditioned feelings. So what you do is, when the bodily sensations are occurring before the mind becomes angry, there's going to experience bodily sensations like tightening of the chest or tightening in the throat or heat in the face or maybe pressure in the skull. You guys have probably experienced this before you got angry or frustrated. There's some bodily sensation. The Buddha teaches you to cut it off there before it becomes a feeling. And now you preserve your mind. You don't get angry. You don't get frustrated. But that's still the unenlightened mind that's doing that. Because you have a craving, there is a bodily sensation that is alerting you that discontentedness is arising and it's about to become a feeling. So the Buddha teaches you to take action as a bodily sensation, to cut it off and let it go. If you do that enough through your training of meditation and outside of meditation, you'll eventually get to the point where there will be no discontentedness arising. There won't even be those bodily sensations associated with anger arising, because anger will never arise because there are no cravings in the mind. They've been fully extinguished. So an enlightened being, even when their mom dies, they're not going to be sad. They're not going to be frustrated. Not because they don't love their mom. It's not love that's causing the sadness. It's the craving, wanting mom to be permanent. So love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. But in the unenlightened state, we typically associate sorrowfulness at the time of death with love. But that's because people misunderstand that. So an enlightened being, no longer craving for mom to be permanent, understanding she is impermanent and she will die, and the mind has let go, you learn how to love somebody without attachment. That you have this genuine interest in seeing them be well. And you can get to the point where people die and you're not sad and you're not upset. You can see how love is one thing and craving, desire, attachment is something completely different. But the unenlightened mind has trouble seeing this because the lines are so blurred because of this confusion and this misunderstanding. So yes, by the time you get to enlightenment, there is no cutting off of any discontent feelings because there's no cravings that are producing that. There's nothing that's arising.
Yeah, I see. But it's hard to to get away from the attachment when the attachment is with someone close, like our parents or something. And when they don't practice the same things and they feel they don't have the right view and they feel that everything else is causing them discontentedness, I feel like it's my responsibility that they shall not feel discontent or something. So it just puts a little bit of pressure on me. So how to deal with stuff like that. And in this case, I don't know how to get rid of the attachment.
Yeah, the pressure that you're experiencing is the discontentedness based on your craving, wanting mom or dad to be a certain way. And if they are that way, you'll be happy. And if they're not that way, you'll feel this pressure. So you can still get to non-attachment and liberation, even though your parents don't practice the teachings. My mom never practiced Buddhist teachings. My family didn't practice Buddhist teachings, but you can train your mind to eliminate the attachment, the holding on and wanting them to be a certain way. You don't know how to do that right now, 100%, because your mind isn't liberated. But this path is what's going to help you to gradually learn all the tools and techniques that you need along the way to get to that point. So to talk about how to eliminate attachment to someone who's close to you, there's got to be breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity there, consistently ongoing. That's what the Eightfold Path is teaching you. But then there's the contemplation of death, and there's other things that you need in order to really truly get liberated from your attachment. It's not just one thing that's going to liberate that attachment, but an individual needs to start with the Four Noble Truths, understanding the problem. Then they need to move into understanding the entire Eightfold Path, developing a meditation practice, practicing the 5 precepts. But then as they get all of that underway, as you're starting to do now, having studied for about a year, now you need to learn reflection on death, contemplation of death, learn how to separate yourself. When your mom is putting expectations on you, you're going to need to learn how to not adopt that as your own expectations. The mind just doesn't know how to do this yet. You just haven't cultivated enough training of the mind. So if my mom's dead now, this is how I know you can have your mom die and not be sad. When my mom died, I wasn't sad. I wasn't sorrowful. I love my mom, but I wasn't sad. My grandmother's 100 years old. She's about to die soon at some point. I'm sure she's going to die at some point, right? It's not going to be too much longer. I'm not going to be sad. And I love my grandmother deeply. I have a genuine interest in seeing her be well, but I'm not attached to her. I understand she's impermanent. But when your mind's holding on, wanting her to be permanent, that's when you're going to experience the sadness. So there's many things that your mind hasn't learned yet to be able to let go of this attachment. Let me share it this way. When you were a child, did you like ice cream? Did you get excited when you got chocolate ice cream or whatever flavor of ice cream? Yeah. And when your parents didn't give you ice cream, did you sometimes get angry and frustrated? Yeah. What about now? If you don't get chocolate ice cream, are you angry or sad? No, because you don't have that attachment anymore. You've let it go, right? But at one time, you just thought chocolate ice cream, or I don't know what your flavor is, chocolate or strawberry? Chocolate, right? At one time, chocolate ice cream was the best thing you've ever had. And oh my goodness, I just can't wait to get my hands on chocolate ice cream. But at some point along the line, you're like, I've had enough chocolate ice cream. Sure, if you get chocolate ice cream now, it's fine. Okay, you enjoy it, but you're not attached to it. You've let it go. If you have chocolate ice cream, that's fine. If you don't have chocolate ice cream, that's fine too. You can still maintain your contentedness. But your mind hasn't done that with mom. When you have mom with you, or mom's alive, you're getting what you want. You feel happy. But when mom's dead, or mom's angry or frustrated or whatever, you can't be content in that situation because your mind's not getting what it wants. So something like chocolate ice cream, we can let that go at a certain point. With mom, it's a lot harder. With dad, it's a lot harder. With brother, it's a lot harder, right? Because these are relationships that are really tight, that you're really close to. So your mind has to learn and develop the ability to let go. And it just hasn't gotten to that point yet. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yes. Do you have a mic? What's that? If you have a mic, it's better because we have people online that are able to participate in the class. Mm-hmm.
How to enjoy things without attachment?
Sure. So attachment doesn't mean enjoyment. Attachment and craving desire is you're basing your inner feelings on this thing. And if I have this thing, I'll be happy. And if I don't have this thing, I'll be sad. So using the example of chocolate ice cream. If you have chocolate ice cream, you're happy. And if you don't have chocolate ice cream, you're sad. So that means your happiness is limited. That means you can only be happy when you have this chocolate ice cream. So that means you're only limited happiness. But you can train your mind to enjoy the chocolate ice cream by eliminating your craving, desire, attachment, that you're not wanting this chocolate ice cream to be permanent. That, hey, when I taste chocolate ice cream, I know it tastes good and it is enjoyable, but I'm not holding on to it, wanting it to be permanent. I understand this chocolate ice cream is impermanent. So when I come to the store the next time and that chocolate ice cream is unavailable, you can maintain your joy. If I have the chocolate ice cream, great, I'll enjoy it. It tastes great, wonderful. But if I don't have the chocolate ice cream, that's fine too. That's how you can learn, by getting rid of your craving, desires, attachments. And remember, there's an entire path that you haven't learned yet. You need to learn this entire path to be able to eliminate your cravings. And then when you eliminate your cravings, you can be peaceful and joyful if you have chocolate ice cream or you don't have chocolate ice cream. If mom and dad are alive, I can be peaceful and joyful. And if they're dead, I can still be peaceful and joyful there too. But as long as you have craving in your mind, you're not going to be able to do that. So you need to learn how to enjoy things while not holding on to it. And that's what the entire path is going to teach you. So far, we're just talking about right view, making sure you understand what's causing these feelings. Because if you don't understand what's causing them, the whole rest of the path isn't going to make sense to you. And I can't teach you all of this right now in an introduction course, but I'm introducing you to right view so that you'll understand what's causing your discontent feelings. If you'd like to learn this entire path, I have books, I have videos, podcasts. I'm going to be teaching it next week on Tuesday. I'll be teaching the entire path from beginning to end. And then you'll be able to see more of the bigger picture. And you will be able to enjoy things without getting conditioned, pleasant feelings. Based on the condition of having something, you'll be happy. And then if I don't have it, I'll be sad. So for example, if you've had boyfriends or girlfriends, maybe when you guys are together, you feel happy. But then when they leave and go on a business trip, you feel sad. You feel miserable because your mind's attached to them. You can only be happy when you've got them with you. But you can't be with them permanently. because of impermanence. So as long as your mind's holding on, wanting them to be permanent, you're going to be sad. So you need to learn how to enjoy their time with them. When you're with your partner, you can enjoy that time. But then when they're away, you can enjoy that too. That's the liberation. If you have chocolate ice cream, you can enjoy it. And if you don't have chocolate ice cream, you can still enjoy that too. That's the training that you need to come to. And you're not going to be able to see that right now in just an introduction course. So any questions you guys have on any of this? Any more? We've gone a little bit over our time. I apologize, but I was interested in being respectful to all your questions. Okay. All right. What I'll do then is just end by sharing. Oh, Rachel, I'm not sure if that's a question that you have. Yeah, it is. Okay, go ahead.
I have a question about cutting off and letting go of feeling, an unpleasant feeling when it surfaces. Because,
Rachel, can we talk about this after class? I'm going to end class, but I'll leave Zoom open so that we can talk about this afterwards. Because what I'd like to do is just end here. Sorry to have to cut you off there. But I'll definitely help you after class. Let me just end by saying this, that there's continued support for an individual who's interested in making their way to enlightenment. There's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, quizzes. There's in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats. There's ongoing programs, both our group learning program, which is a foundational program that meets on Sundays and Wednesdays. And then there's the Pali Canon English study group that meets each Saturday. And then there's personal discussions that oftentimes a student needs. You can either have those in person or online. And then there's a Facebook group. So you can access all of this from our website by going to buddhadailywisdom.com. That's like a central hub that'll connect you with all these resources. And it's all available to you at no cost. So if you'd like to get access to these resources, you're more than welcome to do that. So I'll just end by thanking all of you guys for coming to learn the teachings of the Buddha, and invite you to learn more if you choose to, where you can gradually go into this. You're not going to see the whole picture in just 3 hours. You're not going to understand everything in just 3 hours. This is just a little taste to get you started. So if you're interested in getting rid of your discontent feelings, it's the path to enlightenment that'll do that. I can share with you that the teachings of the Buddha lead exactly where he said they do. They lead to this peace and this joy, but you just need the wisdom to learn how to do that. And the mind doesn't know how to do that in the unenlightened state because of that unknowing of true reality. So thank you guys for spending a few hours here today, this afternoon. As you need to learn more, you'd like to learn more, feel free to reach out and I'm here to help you. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Okay, Sawadee Krap, Sawadee Krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.